Hi Sugar Buns, this is Season 33 Survivor tier list. Now through this tier list I might say Season 32 sometimes. Sorry, that's an accident. It's meant to be Season 33. Now please do keep in mind that the Faro Lady mechanic buffs are not included alongside with the Prospector and Weeping Clown nerfs. So for this tier list, this is solely focused on what happened in Season 33. For end season buffs and nerfs and adjustments, those are going to be for Season 34 because that's kind of how the adjustment that's kind of why adjustments are made in end season instead of early season, just so Survivor get like a week or two of testing to do before actual rank comes out. Now of course, once again, we're not going to be doing Hunter tier list this season. We're going to do at the end of the next season Wish Goatman, and of course for Season 34 as well, we will see when Night will actually come out to see whether we'll include Night or not. But for now, this is mainly focused on Season 33. Enjoy the video and I'll see you inside. And then our first survivor, as usual, is Lucky Guy. Lucky Guy will be a part of Play for Fun. Now, if we think about Lucky Guy, his containability is a little bit below average because he doesn't really get any good items early game. For now, when you're playing Lucky Guy, you have a 50% chance getting an item that you actually want, and the item is a strong item, for example, like, you know, a perfume, a pocket watch, a gun, an elbow pad, or a rugby ball. Like, these kind of items are considered strong items, and then, you know, like the 100% items that you get are relatively weaker items, such as maybe, you know, the syringe from Doctor or even the book from Explorer. These items don't, technicality speaking, help you out quite that much when you are containing two, and I do think it's especially with the fact that, like, once again, current day meta is about fast chase type hunters, therefore it means that they can change target pretty easily unless you're playing against you know, a chip hunter or something. Therefore for Lucky Guy, more or less when you are playing him, you'll definitely become the first chase. And you know, having one item isn't necessarily enough to kite the hunter. Now you might say, oh look, if I can get a Perfumer's bottle, I can act like Psychologist, but you know, Psycho can still contain for a relatively long time. Why? Because she has that 20-second stress mark. For Lucky Guy himself, his containability is a little bit on the weaker end, and I do think it's especially with the RNG factor side as well. If you wish for an item, but your lucky parcel doesn't give it to you, and you end up having, you know, a syringe, having maybe a thief's flashlight, which could be good, but sometimes depending on the hunter it may not be good. Just any useless items, if you didn't want to get the one that you actually want, it may kind of, you know, roughen you up on the long run. You might not able to actually contain with it early game. Now of course mid to end game you will definitely be fine, but like once again, Lucky Guy is kind of like a jack of all trades but master of none. He can get items that other survivors have, but it's only half the actual amounts of the item, which means, for example, if you use T's flashlight, the flashlight you only get, like, you know, half of it if I'm not wrong, and then the flashlight depletes faster. For the elbow pad, well, I guess for elbow pad and rugby ball it's fine, but like when you're using rugby ball, you also how do I say, regenerate from the stun slower to compared to when forward uses as a ball. So like when it comes to Lucky Guy, yes, we have seen him being played in tourneys, but like there's also, you know, in IBC Southeast Asia tournament, we've seen MX playing Lucky Guy 2, and we've seen, you know, CN server with the WBG Survivor playing Lucky Guy as well sometimes, and with our MRC Survivor team as well. When they were first chased, I do believe quite a lot of the times what they got was a needle, and because of that they weren't able to contain, and the game ended up being a 4-man elimination as well. So like in rank, yes, you could potentially get the item you want, but it's still too luck determined unless NetEase decides to, you know, maybe buff Lucky Guy to the point that he gains a 100% pick rate from whatever items he actually wants to get. Then maybe we can move him up a little bit higher. But for now, Lucky Guy is still more or less a part of, you know, Play for Fun in our tier list. And it's also the fact that you need to spend time looking for an item. You need to spend time running across the map looking for items, getting, you know, items from the chest. And even if you do manage to get items from chest, there's still that 50-50, you know, chance of actually not getting it. In which you can probably say, hey, look, if you missed the first 50-50, at least you can guarantee your next item, but that's just still so much time used instead of, you know, just normally decoding. Sometimes when you're too focused on looking for items as well as the lucky guy, your cipher machine may not be enough, and you might actually be the reason why you don't have enough cipher machine to pop for any game. So yeah, there's that for lucky guy. Now, next is Doctor. Doctor will also be a part of play for fun for me this season too. I do think it's mainly because of the fact that, hey, there are now like Ivy, there are now like Geisha, Opera, and you know, a lot of these fast dash type of hunters. Yes, Doctor might not be bad, especially when it comes to survivor body block from you while you heal, but that also is quite a big of an issue too, because then there will be no one else, you know, decoding because of that. Last season, Doctor, I'm quite sure, was a part of team comp dependence. This season, for me, I'm gonna move her down a little bit more, especially with the fact that I haven't seen her that much in ranks. I haven't seen her excel that much in ranks as well. I haven't really seen her being performed on a global scale in Southeast Asia tourneys. In CN server, you see her from time to time, but not that much. In actual professional tourneys as well, she has not been chosen out for Ivy. Well, yeah, she has not been chosen out for Ivy, which you can just get Barmaid and Psychologist instead. So I do feel like for Doctor, you know, yes, she has gotten a lot of buffs. Yes, she has the capability of body blocking and then leaving the survivor and then, you know, healing herself and come back for body block again. But I do think a lot of times now the hunter do realize, hey, we can just change targets for Doctor if that is the case. Why? Because Doctor doesn't have anything else to use to contain. So let's just get Doctor down instead and then chair Doctor and maybe change targets towards the one that we were originally chasing. Especially in such a fast chase meta like this, that actually wouldn't be too bad from the hunter's point of view as well. And like when you chase after Doctor, yes, if you get a chip, you get a movement speed boost, but also at the same time, it's kind of like saying you don't see that much, you know, chip hunters anymore in rank and in current day meta. You might see a Bonbon or a Gala once in a while, but most of the time they're really fast single chase hunters. And it's also with the fact that, like, if they see you as a Doctor player playing Doctor and you're camping a pallet, they're most likely going to bring fast pallet breaking as well. Therefore, like, even if you do want to heal up behind the pallet, there's just too much mind games, there's just too much, you know, back and forward. And even if you do want to heal, they won't let you heal that easily. I personally do think Warp was also another reason why Doctor become very unreliable. Why? Because yes, when you hit Doctor, Doctor gets a speed boost. She also has veteran boost, in which the speed boost lasts 2 seconds longer. She can also vault a window during that time as well to double stack the speed boost. But all these stacks wouldn't really even matter that much against chip hunters as well, because they can just warp to you immediately and then hit you down if you are first chase. Therefore, for me, I also do think the introduction of Warp has brought Doctor down from team comp dependence to play for fun. Now, of course, her decoding is average, her rescuing is average, and yes, there are people who run her without borrow time, there are people who run her with Tide Turner, but like all in all, still a very risky character to play without that much of a high reward. So, you know, that's my opinion for Doctor. Next will be Lawyer. Lawyer will be a part of Versatile for me. I do think Lawyer is still really good. I wouldn't really put him on solo ranker because he's way more than that, especially with what is in his kit. So what is Lawyer? Lawyer has his own inbuilt trait in which when he uses, well, even with or without using the map, he will gain, you know, special effects such as you're able to vault the window faster or a pallet faster for each new window / pallet you vault. You're able to decode faster for each percent for, I think, I'm quite sure every 2.5 or 3.5 decoding you do on a cipher machine, you gain a 1% decoding speed boost. And of course, when Lawyer runs on the map, he can get up to a maximum of 3.5% movement speed boost after a certain amount of distance. And when you use your map when doing all these things, the effects gets doubled. effects gets doubled, aside from decoding, of course, aside from decoding. But that's not the only thing what the map does. The map also allows you to see where the hunter is at all times as well. And this is more or less just, you know, a wall hack for a lawyer. You're able to see where the hunter is immediately when the game begins. So if the hunter is actually coming for you, you can immediately pull distance away and make a really hard, give the hunter a really hard time to actually try and find you. And during that time as well, when you're running away, you're already stacking up that movement speed boost slowly but surely up to a maximum of 3.5%. If you vault any windows or pallets when you're using the map too, it will actually double the effect. So let's say if one vault of a window is 1.5%, when you use the map while you vault, it's 3%. They give you an immediate 3% of vaulting speed permanently as well. And imagine stacking that up with muscle memory. That is going to be pretty scary, isn't it? And I do think as well, it's with the fact that, you know, lawyer does not get terror shock too, which doesn't make him a bad rescuer, because A, he has vault boost, B, he has movement speed boost, and C, he cannot get terror shock. So like against maybe single hit hunters or maybe chip hunters, he can just immediately go in and rescue against the hunter without actually trying to play mind games or avoiding to get the terror shock. Now for lawyer, even if you don't chase him early game, he is still quite a formidable foe mid to end game because of his decoding speed boost. Being able to get a 15% decoding speed boost in total right after decoding one full cipher machine is pretty scary, because if you think about all the other survivors, right, I'm quite sure it's TME, the Mind's Eye rank 1 with 120% decoding, and then it's lawyer with 115, and then it's mechanic and prisoner with 110, and then it's composer, but composer needs to slowly but surely stack up too. Or maybe composer could be faster than lawyer. You know what, composer could be faster than lawyer. So like lawyer is ranked maybe second/third on the decoding speed boost, you know, amongst all the survivors. So like he's still someone very scary even if you don't chase after him. But of course, because of the fact that he has high containability, because of the fact that he has so many buffs, so many like good traits, good external traits, and really, well, I don't really think he has, no, he doesn't have any bad external traits. He doesn't have any debuffs himself, so on that side note, lawyer is honestly a really good character to use in ranks as well, whether you're playing in a team or whether you're playing by yourself. Okay, next is Thief. Thief will be a part of solo ranking, and let's just talk about Thief for a little bit. So, what does Thief have? Thief has his flashlight, in which when you flash a light towards the hunter, even if your flashlight isn't actually on the hunter's face, you can nullify all skill effect within 1 second of putting the flashlight on the hunter. And of course, during that time as well, if they try to moonwalk, they cannot moonwalk anymore, in which then it means if you can flash the light on the hunter's face, in which it's guaranteed for 2 seconds, you're able to stun the hunter. Now, when it comes to Thief's flashlight too, he also gets an extra 3 high-powered flashlights in which you can drop them down near pallets or windows, in which when the hunter vaults those pallets, or no, vault the pallet slash the windows or break the pallets, then they will, genuinely speaking, you know what, guarantee a stun with those flashlights too. So Thief not only has his main flashlights, he also has 3 mini flashlights in which he can place down on the ground, you know, near exchange areas such as pallets slash windows. But not only that, Thief has a lot of good external traits too, such as flexibility, in which it basically allows him to permanently fast vault any obstacle when he is in running state. He also does have Hoarder, in which it basically increases the chances of trigger a calibration effect by 10%. And of course, if you can get that golden calibration, you will gain that, you know, calibration decoding speed boost too. So Thief is pretty good when it comes to wanting to cipher rush as well. And not only that, his lockpick external trait allows him to increase his chest opening speed by 100%. Now for this external trait update too, it is also applied to all other survivors. So like if you have a full survivor team that maybe consists of, you know, mercenary, consists of thief, consists of lawyer, consists of lucky guy, all their chest opening speed is basically decreased by half. So it only takes half the amount of normal time to open the chest. So like that's honestly speaking not a bad external trait, especially when it comes to getting ready for endgame as well, if one of your survivors doesn't really have any more items. But not only that, Thief is really good against certain hunters such as Bonbon, such as Sculptor, such as, you know, Opera in open areas, or even Violinist. But then, of course, since Thief is a part of solo ranker, he also does have quite a lot of counters too. Let's say Ivy, let's say Wax Artist, let's say Evil Reptilian, let's say Gamekeeper. Like along the lines of these in which you can close distance immediately between yourself, well, between yourself and the hunter, they counter you. But if you can pull distance away from them and maintain that distance, Thief counters those type of hunters instead. Now, with Thief as well, his decoding speed is average, his containability is very strong, and his rescue, well, he doesn't necessarily need to come rescue, but what Thief is also really good at is a rebound kite character, or even assisting survivors in rebound kiting. And what do I mean by this? Take for an example, if your rescuer comes to rescue a survivor that's on the chair, and then you as a thief came in nearby and starts flashing your light at the hunter. When you flash your light at the hunter, you nullify the hunter's skill effect, and therefore the hunter will have to either A, try to force a charge attack out and hit you, in which allows the survivor on the chair to run away, or B, tank dash stun from the flashlight. Whatever the hunter decides to do here, as a thief main, you're always going to be able to get the upper hand against the hunter and allow your survivor to have more of a chance to be able to rebound kite. Now, of course, because of this, yes, your decoding speed is a little bit slower, but like this is really good against, you know, certain type of hunters if they are, you know, really focused on chair camp, or even just hunters that can easily get ciphered with only 2 survivors decoding as well. So like for Thief, not only can you contain, you have so many good external traits, you are also really good, you know, soft harasser against certain hunters that allow your survivors to rebound kite contain, and you have 3 mini flashlights for yourself to use as, you know, a precautionary measure against, you know, certain type of hunters if they're trying to vault over or break pallets / windows as well. Therefore, I do think, look, Thief isn't a bad choice if you want to try play this guy. He also does have pretty funny emotes as well, in which I hate them as a hunter, but as a survivor they're honestly speaking pretty funny. But Thief will be a part of solo ranker for our season 32 tier list. Now, next will be Gardener. Gardener will be a part of team comp dependent as a character. Yes, we've seen Gardener multiple times in tourneys. Yes, we've seen Gardener maybe sometimes in rank, but she's really only viable in tourneys where you have a really nice team to play with, or you're really good at containing, or your team knows what they're doing and how to harass or wear it down if there's a Gardener on your team. Now, for Gardener, she has a toolkit or a toolbox in which it allows her to actually dismantle a rocket chair. And right after dismantling the rocket chair countdown time will be increased by 10%. Not only does Gardener have that, Gardener has also multiple other, you know, external traits, such as her bubble, in which she has a 50-second bubble early game, in which, well, yeah, as I said as well, it lasts 50 seconds, and after the 50-second bubble is gone, you have to wait 20 seconds for your next bubble to be ready, up and going. Now, in order to activate the bubble, you need to stand still for 2 seconds for the bubble to activate for 5 seconds. But of course, if your bubble gets interrupted during the 2-second time, whatever time you stood still for, it will be carried over for the next time, in which the max you can carry over is 1.7 seconds. And what do we mean by that? What we mean is, when you're standing still as Gardener getting your bubble ready, let's say you stand still still for 1 second and the hunter hits you, that means the next time you stand still, you only need to stand still for 1 second instead of 2 seconds to get your bubble fully back up, in which most of us have seen in tourneys as well. And most of us are seeing tourneys as well. Like, it works really well when it comes to rebound kite containing. If Gardner knows that she's about to go down on the ground, she's just gonna stand still and let the hunter hit her. So then, like, the next time when a survivor comes around to rescue her, she can immediately activate that bubble to counter a normal hit and try her best to rebound kite against the hunter. But not only that, Gardner also has this external trait called Confidence, in which it increases her vaulting speed by 10% when she's near rocket chair, and if she's chaired on rocket chairs, it also decreases the rocket chair countdown by a further 10%. So if you're a Gardner and you dismantle the chair you were originally in, and if the hunter decides to chair you near the chair on the chair that you dismantled, the rocket countdown time will be decreased by 20%, because A, you dismantled the rocket chair, and B, Gardner's inner trait, external trait Confidence, decreases the rocket chair countdown by and also 10%, regardless of whether you broke that chair or not. So like, Gardner has a lot of good external traits if you think about it. Like, alongside with these, you know, veteran type characters, they don't really have that much debuffs as their external trait. But then, like, she also wouldn't be marked any higher, because if you do bad as Gardner and your survivors don't know what to do, then you can't really fully excel what Gardner can do. Meaning, let's say for an example, if your survivor downs near a corner and then like the hunter comes, no, not the hunter, sorry, the rescuer comes to rescue the survivor on chair, and you as the Gardner decides to dismantle the chair that the survivor was originally in. And now this time the survivor decided, hey, let's down somewhere else instead of near the area where I was chaired. Then it's kind of more or less just a waste of your time when you as a Gardner came to run and dismantle that chair for survivors to be put back in there to buy more time for decoding. And now this time the survivor decides to go somewhere else instead, and instead of staying in the same area and maybe standing still and crouching, trying to get like a little bit further away from the chair, so then like when the hunter comes back to chair the survivor that is downed, the hunter needs to drop the survivor down and then pick the survivor up and then chairing them, in which maybe the survivor can struggle. A lot of times in ranked, they don't think about that much. Like what I've explained there, it probably just went over everyone's head, because I went through that really quickly. But like, if most of us didn't understand what I just said, then you're gonna have a hard time playing Gardner in rank, especially without a team as well. It's hard to be able to play harass Gardner if your team doesn't know what they're doing, or if your team just decides to throw the whole game. Even if you play really well as a harass Gardner and you're like, oh yes, I'm doing great, I'm allowing my survivors to struggle free and maybe allow them to rebound kite, but then your harasser comes in to harass for no gosh darn reason when they should be decoding instead, and then you're still missing one full cipher machine. That's kind of where you're like, what's happening now? And then your harasser messes up, because like, if your harasser comes in, your main harasser comes in, like a forward or a batter, you have to leave. Cause now there's only one survivor out there decoding. That means just decoding is even slower, and we might lose the game because we're over harassing now. So like, a lot of the times, okay, maybe in high tier it'll be a bit easier, but like, from what I've seen in high tier as well, sometimes they don't even know what the Gardner is doing too. You know, and I do think it's especially with the fact that there's not that much communication in high tier for Gardner to excel in. Look, if you're in a 4-man team, brilliant. That's why she's in this team comp. But if you're not in a 4-man team, if you're in a 2-man team, the other duo might kind of screw you up a little bit because they don't understand your intentions. Because like, sometimes survivor might be like, oh, I'm chaired here, but there's a cipher near here, I need to down somewhere else instead, and that's what they'll do. But then you as a Gardner, you came near to this chair instead and to dismantle the chair, and you're like, oh well, I guess that chair is useless now. Or even vice versa, if you as the Gardner decided to dismantle a chair that's somewhere far away that doesn't have a cipher machine, but then your survivor thinks, oh, my Gardner is coming, I'll just down somewhere near towards my chair, therefore I will not disturb any cipher machines. So it's kind of like, It's really like you can't read anyone's minds. She is good, yes, I won't disagree, but still very team comp dependent. Still very team comp dependent. Next will be Magician. Magician is a part of solo ranker, and if we talk about Magician, he does have 3 wands for himself to use. Each time the Magician uses a wand, he places down an illusion and he gets a 40% movement speed boost for 2 seconds while he is invisible, which means when he uses his wand, he'll be invisible for 2 seconds and he'll gain a 40% movement speed boost. Now, during this time as well, when the illusion has been placed down, the illusion can act as an obstacle, in which when you put an illusion down, let's say in between pallets, and the hunter wants to walk past the pallet, and an illusion is in between them, they can't walk past the pallet. They're gonna have to hit the illusion, and when the hunter hits the illusion, they will be their position will be revealed to all survivors for 15 seconds. What does this mean? This just means that all survivors can see a white outline of the hunter when the illusion is hit. Therefore, all survivors kind of do know where you are containing at all times if the hunter hits illusion. So like, that's, I think, also a really good plus reason why he's a part of solo ranker, because he can give out this information whenever the hunter hits his illusion, whenever he wants. And most of the times what Magician mains will do is they will use the illusion when the hunter is performing their basic attack to tank the hit and also gain that 40% movement speed boost. So what does that also mean? That also means that he is pretty strong when it comes to solo containing early game or mid game against any type of hunter. Now the cooldown for this ability is 10 seconds, in which, look, if you're invisible for 2 seconds, by technicality this cooldown is 8 seconds. By technicality this cooldown is 8 seconds. But Magician does not only have that, Magician also has 2 more external traits. One is called Dexterous, in which he basically decreases the chances of calibration coming into effect. Now this will be bad for some survivors who like calibration effects, but then like this is pretty good for survivors who doesn't like calibration effect. So if you don't like doing the calibration thing, you can just play Magician for that. But not only that, when Magician gets on the rocket chair and he gets rescued, he leaves an illusion on the chair for 2 seconds before the illusion disappears from the chair. During the time he will run away as well. Now when he gets rescued, he will be invisible, of course, and then like when he appears or uninvisible himself, the illusion will disappear. So it's like oh, when the Magician is invisible, the illusion will be there, but if the Magician isn't invisible, the illusion will slowly but surely start to disappear. Therefore, quite a tongue twister. Therefore, you know, for Magician, he does have a really good chance of rebound kiting, but only once, because this effect only activates once per game. So like, even if you're chaired for the second time and you get rescued, there won't be an illusion on the chair. So it's only a once off ability only, in which, you know what, it's not bad. It's honestly speaking not bad at all. His soul containment is good. He doesn't have any harass, and his decodability is also good as well. Well, it's average. As long as there's no decoding debuff, the decodability is usually speaking pretty good as well. But yeah, Magician will be a part of solo ranking because of this too. Next will be Explorer. Explorer will be a part of tie guarantee as of this season. To be honest with you, last season he was a part of solo ranker. This season I decided to drop him down by 1 more, not because he got any worse. To be honest with you, Explorer did get his buffs, in which it made him way better, but it's just that I'm not seeing a lot of Asia nor NAEU nor CM players or JP players playing him that much. Now, Explorer is a really good character. Explorer has his external trait called Fantasy, in which he has a book, and when you open that book, he will be turned into Lilliputian mode, in which he is basically tiny AF. And during this mode as well, you're able to see where the hunter's location is within 100-meter radius, if I'm not wrong, and you can find where the book is, where the pages is as well, so buried treasure. And of course, when you go out to look for these buried treasure, you're able to find 3 across the map. And why 3, you may ask? Because each one of these buried pages will give you 50% decoding progress, which means the first page takes 27 seconds to dig, the second page takes 24 seconds to dig, and the last page, the third page, takes 20 seconds to dig. This means This means that you only need a total of 71 seconds to get 150% decoding, I guess, decoding in general, accumulated, and you can go on to any cipher machine and just pop the pages in, and the cipher machine will be immediately decoded that much. Yes, we are excluding the fact that you have to walk to find the pages, in which is another reason why I decided to drop Explorer down. Explorer is really good in smaller maps such as Hospital, such as Arms Factory, such as Leo's Memories, and Arms Factory. Therefore, like, him being able to get his pages faster is a really good thing. Now, not only does Explorer has that, Explorer also has the Explorer effect, in which it allows his trails to be disappeared 1 second faster. So if you stack this up with Feather, your trails basically disappear 3 seconds faster. And I'm quite sure your trails persist for like 4 or 5 seconds, if I am not wrong. No, the footprints actually last for 3 seconds. So like, you know, in this case scenario, it's not a bad thing. Sorry, the footprints last 4 seconds, not 3. Explorer's footprints last 3 seconds, but if you stack on the Feather effect, it will last only 1 second. So like, it's really easy for the hunter to actually lose you if they aren't being careful at all. Now, there are some debuffs when it comes to Explorer 2, in which we will talk about, but the only one big debuff is that he gains a 10% movement speed reduction when he is in his miniature form. Now, in this case scenario, look, it doesn't really matter. Why? Because when you're hiding away from the hunter, you don't need to be running that fast. You want to be walking and hiding your footprints. But if you're trying to run around the map and find where your pages are, it's better for you to actually activate the Lilliputian mode first to see how far away the page is, and then go back to, you know, normal human form, normal size form, and run to get it. Because, you know, like, that 10% movement speed debuff is going to cost you quite a bit, especially when it's like, you know, this game is a game of time. Cipher machine decoding progress matters much, so there's something like that you have to keep in mind as well. But for Explorer, really, he is a little bit, you know, map dependent too. And like, because he works really well in a small map, that also acts as a double-edged sword for him. And what does this mean? This means that if it's a small map, that means that the hunter has a not easier time, but a better chance of being able to find him than, you know, finding him in big maps as well. So like, for Explorer right now, let's just say, hey, he did get his buffs. He is really good. Another one of his buffs is actually, if he stands still for 6 seconds, he'll gain a movement speed boost of 25% for 4 seconds. That's honestly speaking not bad, especially if you're found immediately as well while you're hiding. You have more of a chance of surviving because of this too. You know, this was buffed from 20% to 25%. So like, that's honestly speaking pretty good, especially when it comes to transitioning as well right after hiding. But I'm just not seeing that much people play him. I mean, he is not a bad character. He's definitely tie guarantee, because if you sell the Survivor on chair, he will have 150% decoding speed boost, well, decoding progress on his hands to put it onto a cipher machine or something. And he does not have any decoding debuffs too. Now, he decodes normally like any survivors, but you know what, look, sure, look, that's fine. If you sell, you should be able to decode like a good 60-70% anyway. So like, Explorer is a character that can guarantee 2 cipher machines or 3 cipher machines to pop by himself. But also at the same time, he's a good character because he's able to know where the hunter is, and he can hide away from the hunter. Now, from time to time, you are going to be able to be found by the hunter. But by the time the hunter finds you, they probably wasted a good 30 to 40 seconds finding you anyway. So like, you're gonna tank the first hit, but then by the time the second hit comes, you most likely have 2.5 cipher machine guns anyways, which is why I'm not putting Explorer down any further below tie guarantee. I think tie guarantee is not a bad tier for him to stay in this season. Next is Mercenary. Mercenary will be a part of meta, as of course we all know. But what does Mercenary have? Mercenary has 3 elbow pads, in which all these elbow pads allows you to utilize dash hit, in which when the elbow pad has been activated and you're near a wall, you're able to get a dash up to a certain amount of meters, and it's basically within 1 second you're able to dash that far up. So it's kind of like a mini teleportation. It's kind of like warp. Yeah, it's kind of like warp, but maybe up to a limited distance, and it's pretty flexible. So like you can use your elbow pad to do a 90-degree turn, you can do your elbow pad to do a 180-degree turn. It's more flexible than warp, but of course the distance is a little bit shorter. For Mercenary, he's a part of meta because he can tank a Terror Shock hit and still rescue. And you know, like as a rescuer who's able to do that, as the only rescuer who is able to do that, that is pretty impressive. So this basically means that he can tank one Terror Shock hit regardless of, you know, how harsh the rescue conditions is. Now, unless he already has a chip or he's already a half health, it doesn't matter. He has to be a full health to actually tank the Terror Shock hit. But not only that, Mercenary also has his external trait called Skilled, in which he vaults over pallet/windows 10% faster. He also has this thing called Steel Will, in which it's what we've talked about before as well. His damage is delayed by 8 seconds, so one hit is delayed by 8 seconds. If you get a Terror Shock, it's delayed by 16 seconds, meaning he can still stay alive and running for 8/16 seconds if he has been injured. If he has been injured, right? And that's why he can rescue against Terror Shock potentials. But like, you know, as a rescuer main, yes, he does have his debuffs too, in which he decodes 25% slower. Hashtag the new mechanic next season. Side eye. And but because of this as well, he also heals 15% slower if I am not wrong. So per each new injury he gets, so per each hit he gets, he will gain a 15% stack of healing debuff up to a maximum of 75%, which means if this guy was hit 4 times, you're gonna take 75% longer to actually heal him compared to normal survivors, which is why a lot of the times Mercenary mains do bring the persona effect healing, in which it can increase your heal rate from teammates by 15, 20, 25% faster. Now, of course, if you're trying to self-heal yourself as Mercenary, you need to bring Sticker, in which it increases self-healing speed by 10, 15/20% per each stack, of course. Now, aside from all the debuffs, there is also another buff that Mercenary have, in which it decreases his time staying on the chair by 10%. So he can basically stay on the chair for 66 seconds instead of only 60 seconds. And look, if you're a hunter main and you're trying to chase after Mercenary first, don't, unless you're a very old hunter and you know how to play against Mercenary. But still don't. I don't really recommend it, because like, not only is there a mini Titan effect built into Mercenary, it's just pure annoying. Because like, let's just say if you get a hit on Mercenary, okay, he waits 8 seconds, he actually gets to his half health, and you hit him for the second time. Instead of Mercenary actually going down immediately, he will be able to run towards maybe a further corner away from the chair to give you a harder time to chair, or force you to take more time to actually chair the Mercenary to put him on the chair progress, right? So like, Mercy isn't really the best character to chase after. He is a really strong character, of course, if you play him well, if you know how to dash it properly, use your elbow pad properly. Most of the times, everything would be in your favor. And I would say, right, look, because sometimes it's hard to rescue against maybe Bonbon, against Nayid, against Sculptor, you could just elbow pad in and then immediately rescue. Look, even if you get Terror Shocked, it's fine, you can still rescue anyways. But like, not only that, Mercenary is also really good because he can close distance between himself and the rocket chair. So like, being able to use his elbow pads to, you know, close the distance. I'm quite sure he can dash like 20, 30, 40, 50 meters. I'm quite sure he can dash like up to 50 meters. If I'm not wrong, it should be around 50 meters. He can dash 50 meters. What does this mean? It means that he can actually leave the Cypher machine slower, for him to maybe pop off his Cypher machine first before he goes to rescue, or even right after he rescues, he can elbow pad away to prevent a double hit, a double down situation against a hunter. So like, there's just so many good ways to use Mercenary. It's hard to be able to gain advantage of, you know, a good Mercy main, a good Mercenary main. So then, like, yeah, he is really meta character, a really meta character. Yes, 25% decoding debuff sounds a little bit harsh, but like, you know, because of all the perks he has, it's not a bad trade-off. It's especially with the fact that he can rescue if he is at half health as well. So like if you want to maintain that Cypher Rush ability, Mercenary isn't a bad pick too. So Mercenary is still meta. Well, I mean, he's been meta for so long, but yes, he is still meta. Next will be Coordinator. Coordinator will be a part of Solo Ranker. For now, she's still a part of Solo Ranker. Yes, she's been perma-banding tourneys, but in rank, she is still a part of Solo Ranker. I do think Coordinator can be a little bit higher if you can play in a 4-man team whenever, whatever, and however, if NetEase ever allows it. That's a lot of evers I just said. But for now, she's a part of Solo Ranking because look, there's going to be times where you're not going to be able to get 4 stacked. So like even if you want to play Cordy and just survive plays dumb, there's nothing we can do about it sadly. Now, what does Cordy has? Cordy has a gun in which this gun allows you to shoot the hunter. And you can stun them for a certain amount of time. Now, of course, all other survivors can use the gun as well. It's not only exclusive to Cordy, but the good thing about when Cordy uses a gun is they are stunned for 30% extra time. So like between a lucky guy and a Cordy, if a lucky guy has a gun and shoots the hunter, the hunter is not stunned as long as compared to if the coordinator shoots a gun at the hunter, right? But then also at the same time, the only 2 survivors who's able to get a gun in rank are either Coordinator or Lucky Guy. You're not able to get a gun in the chest in rank as well. Just for those of you that don't know, that is 100% not possible. You're not able to get a gun in rank. You can get it in quick match, yes, but you're not able to get it in rank. Not from a chest anyways. Not only does Cordy have that, Cordy also has a reduction of 10% in the chair countdown, and Cordy has an external trait called Army Bond in which her vaulting speed is permanently increased by 10%, and if she is near a pallet or window, she gains a 15% additional movement speed and another 10% vault speed for 4 seconds. So in total, Cordy actually has 20% vault speed, but that's only, if you're able to activate that external trait. Now, I got a little bit mixed up, excuse me. The external trait is called Skilled. Army Bond is if a survivor is chaired, you're able to gain a 5% movement speed, but your decoding will be decreased by 25%. So like, yes, Coordinator doesn't have any decoding debuffs unless the survivor is on chair, which makes Cordy a really good candidate as well when it comes to Cypher Rush potential teams. She's able to decode really fast until someone gets on chair. She can guarantee rescue because she can gun the hunter straight in the face and be like, yep, I can just get a no damage rescue right now. Or she can balloon her ass because she can just stay near the hunter and be like, oh, let me just emote, and if you drop the hunter down, if you drop the survivor down, that's great for me. If you don't drop the survivor down, I'll just gun you and then the survivor will come down anyway, so it's okay. It's okay. Now, you do have to be relatively close towards the hunter for you to be able to do that, because if you're too far away, most of the times the hunters are able to react on time to put the survivor down from the balloon, so then, like yada yada who, your gun has failed, and as a Cordy main, that will suck. That would genuinely speaking suck because you only have that one item. Yes, you can replenish items from the chest, or you can give items to your survivor. You can even give your items to your survivor if you want to, but like I still recommend Coordinator just having the gun on her hand because she can stun the hunter for 30% longer compared to any other survivor if they have the gun. So like, yeah, it's more or less overall just better for Cordy have the gun. But like, as a rescuer for Coordinator, she has like in total 20% vault speed. In total, she has 15% extra movement speed boost if she is near a pallet or window. Now, there's a cooldown for 40 seconds of that. We don't talk about it, but there is a cooldown there. But like most of the times, if you're able to get that movement speed boost, it allows you to either vault over the window or pallet ASAP so you don't get terror shocked, or it allows you to get behind a pallet ASAP as well so you don't get hit. Therefore, like for Coordinator, she's definitely a really good solo ranking. She definitely could be higher up as well. If you can always 4-man stack in rank, you can't, because in peak tier, tier 7, tier 8, you're not allowed to do that. So like, yeah, and of course it's with the fact that she doesn't have any decoding debuff until someone actually gets on the chair. So really good Cypher Rush character too. But yes, that's that for Coordinator. Now next is Priestess. Priestess is of course a part of meta, and Priestess is honestly speaking a really good character. She has 2 portals early game out of 3, and each portal takes 70 seconds to regenerate. She can use a normal straight passage in which it's just her deploying a portal down from one side of the wall to another, or she can just use an ultra long passage in which she can connect the portal for her from herself to another survivor across the map globally. Now, of course, if you want this ultra long passage to be generated, to be activated, you need to get your survivor to actually respond to your calls. So it's like if the survivor doesn't respond to your phone call and hangs up, your ultra long passage is going to go into a 150-second cooldown, and that is a no-no. That is honestly speaking a no-no. But of course for Priestess, she also does have a few debuffs and buffs as well for her external trait, and we'll talk about the debuffs first. So for a Priestess, she is fragile, which means she has a 10% slower vaulting speed compared to any other survivors. So like this kind of just means, hey, she's a little bit more prone to terror shocks, such as maybe against Naiad, against opera singers, and she is a Spiritualist, in which her decoding speed is decreased by 10%, and the chance of triggering calibration and the difficulty of calibration while decoding a cipher machine is increased by 30%. Now, because of the fact that she has more chance to, activate calibration, it just means that she has more chance to get a perfect calibration, to get a decoding buff as well, to get that calibration buffs from the decoding progress. Therefore, I would say, if she has a higher chance of activating the calibration effect, the 10% decoding debuff might not actually seem like a lot. But of course, moving on towards her buff, which is her external trait Blessed, she heals survivors. Well, the time needed for other survivors to heal is decreased by 10%, which means survivors can now heal 10% faster. The time needed for Priestess to heal herself, or for Priestess to heal herself, is 30%, which means Priestess can basically self-resurrect herself within 30% faster than any other survivor who's down on the ground. So Priestess is honestly speaking not a good character to leave on the ground if you want to try slugging, because she can just she can just get up pretty fast and maybe a long portal away. Now, not only that, Priestess is really good at solo containing, especially early game as well. When you use your portal and you put it between one wall to the other, the hunter will get stunned. Now, of course, there is a minimum of 1.5 second stun to, I think, 2.5 seconds / 3 second stun, depending on how long the portal is. If I'm not wrong, I'm not really sure how long the stun will be. Oh, sorry, it's from... The stun duration will be increased from 2 seconds up to 3.25 seconds. So 2 second minimum up to 3.25 seconds maximum, depending on the length of that passage, of that portal. It's honestly speaking not too bad if you're able to stun the hunter for 2 seconds but minimum. So it kind of allows you to rotate away towards the next nearer pallet or cipher machine, pallet or window. So she's a really good container in that sense as well. And she has 2 portals early game, in which most of the times Priestess mains are able to contain until their 3rd portal actually comes up and ready to go. But if Priestess is not chased first, she can definitely deploy an ultra long passage portal down first, in which maybe whichever survivor is getting chased, they can go through it and then get towards Priestess and then get healed by Priestess, or Priestess can just use the ultra long passage to decode the cipher machine in which the rescuers were decoding. So this ultra long passage is more or less of, oh, I can help you decode, or oh, I can actually heal you if you manage to go through it as well. And unless the hunter has teleport or warp, you're not going to be able to actually catch up towards the survivor fast enough, because most of the time Priestess mains do bring a doctor effect, in which the healing speed is increased by 15, 20 / 25%. Now if you stack that up with her 10% healing speed, Priestess can basically heal survivors 35% faster. And 35% faster for you to use warp or teleport. Look, you might be able to make it, but most of the time you won't be able. And if you don't have these traits as well, it's more or less of just saying, hey, you need to walk up to the survivor, and by the time you find a survivor, he'll be back, or she'll be back up at full health. So that does become a bit of a problem as well. So Priestess is, high supportability. Priestess is high heal ability, and you know, yes, she has a 10% decoding debuff, but she also has a 30% extra chance of being able to utilize that golden calibration for the calibration decoding buff. So like, it kinda cancels itself out. It kinda does, but you know, like, still a very meta character, because like she can contain, she can decode, and she can also heal very fast. And her support ability is really good as well, because her survivors can use the straight passage or the ultra long passage to contain even longer. Like, Priestess is a really good character as well to get portal set up for maybe a rebound kite or a, you know, longer kite when you're first kiting. So yeah, Priestess is still a part of meta. Now, next is Mechanic. Mechanic will be a part of team comp dependent, but I'm not going to put Mechanic any further up, you know, above Gardener. Now, just to let everyone know as well, this is Mechanic season 32, so it's for this current season before her buff. So this is post-buffed, no, pre-buff Mechanic, right? So for those of you who are thinking, oh, this is season 3 meta, 33 meta, no, it's not. I don't do a tier list until the end of the season because we need more information on them before we can release them, just so our information is a little bit more accurate and what I talk about is a little bit more accurate. But for season 32, she is a little bit low. No, wait, is this season 33 right now? It is season 33. Sorry. For season 33, she is quite low. For season 33, she is 100% quite low. She's very similar to last season as well. There's really nothing much more or less we can add to. Mechanic has a doll in which her doll depletion speed is reduced by 33% if the mechanic is using it, and of course the doll decodes 10% slower. It has a 10% slower decoding rate. Now, when the mechanic is controlling the doll will have 100% decoding rate, which means Mech's doll will gain a 10% decoding speed boost, and of course the Mech herself has a 10% decoding speed boost originally from the Mech Master external trait. So that is kind of all of Mechanic's, you know, buffs. Now, what are Mechanic's external trait nerfs? Mechanic is fragile, in which it means that it'll take her 15% longer to vault over obstacles, such as pallets or windows. And she has an external trait called Cowardly, in which when a survivor has been injured or is placed on a rocket chair, her decoding speed will be decreased by 35% and her gate opening speed will be decreased by 15%, in which this can be stacked up twice. So this effect can actually be stacked up twice. So like, if there's two of your teammates injured on the field, your decoding speed debuff will be 70%. So like, it'll take you even longer than any other survivor to decode a cipher machine, which is why most of the time Mechanic will use her doll to decode at 110% speed instead of 100% speed, right? So like, with that in mind, oh wait, and another, I forgot to say this as well, right? Another thing about Mech's doll is Mech's doll originally decodes at 110% speed. Like, Mech's doll decodes at Mech's decoding speed. So Mech has 110% decoding speed. Mech's doll initially had 110 decoding speed, but now it's back to 100. And I do think there were a lot of misconceptions on that, unless I was wrong, but I'm quite sure during the patch notes a few months ago, that's what that said. Mech originally had 110% decoding speed, now it's back to 100%. Right, Mech's doll. But then like, when Mech is controlling the doll, the doll will gain an extra 10% decoding speed as well. So like, you know, there you go on that. Just a little bit something that I want to, you know, tell you guys. Now, when the Mechanic's doll is decoding, or when she is, when the doll is moving or is being controlled, her doll will deplete. But if the doll is healing or is decoding an exegate, the doll duration will not deplete, which is why a lot of times you see Mechanic's doll being deployed down near the exegate, and even though there's only maybe 1% on the doll, the doll can still do a full cipher machine, a full exegate. So like, yeah, there you go on that. That is kind of why Mech's doll is pretty good endgame, and why a lot of, you know, hunters back in the day banned Mech. Mechanic can also decode on chair as well, in which it makes her really good, in which it definitely does make her really good. But one of the biggest issues when it comes to Mechanic is, you know, current day meta, yes, it's basically fast chase type character. So like, if Mech deploys her doll down and the doll has been found and the hunter hits the doll, you only have 50% doll left. You only have 50% doll left, and if you do try to use the doll to body block, that's just more presence fed it to the hunter, and mechanic doesn't really get a movement speed boost after her doll has been hit. So like, you know, unless mech gets a movement speed buff when the doll has been hit, understandable. Because, you know, a lot of times when the survivor gets hit by the hunter, they gain a movement speed boost for like 2-3 seconds. But mech, no, she doesn't. Not when the doll has been hit anyways. So like, it's also very team comp dependent, because your teammate has to be able to contain a good like 30-40 seconds without getting hit. Or even longer, because most of the times what mech mains do is they will deploy their doll down and they will be running around the map. Right, so they'll deploy their doll down, they'll run, and then they'll use the doll to get towards the cipher machine, or yeah, to get towards the cipher machine, so then they can double decode. But then like the biggest issue comes with if you get hit within 20-30 seconds in towards the game, well, mech is still trying to locate a cipher machine, or after she has located a cipher machine with her doll, her main body already has 35% decoding debuff. That is kind of harsh for mechanic. Now, of course, moving on towards next season, it will be a little bit better. It will be a little bit better, but like for this season, having 35% decoding debuff is really harsh, because she's like the slowest decoding character if anyone gets hit. Now, she will be really good if no one gets hit, but if anyone gets hit within 20-30 seconds when mech is still trying to get the doll up and moving and trying to get herself up and moving towards the cipher machine, look, it is what it is by this point. Now, some people may say, but hey, Kudo, isn't there you know, area selection mode right now? In which I would say yes, there is, but most of the times you as a mechanic main, you need to actually run a little bit before you deploy the doll down, because you don't want to deploy the doll down immediately so the hunter finds the doll and hits the doll and then immediately locates you, right? You don't want to do that. You want to be able to hide the doll properly and then run, so then like when the hunter chases you, you can still at least decode on chair. Right, you can still at least decode on chair and you're not feeding any presence to the hunter. So like with so much scenarios in mind too, look, 20-30 seconds is kind of what mech really needs to get herself deployed and ready to go. And it's like a safety precaution measure as well for mechanics when it comes to like saying, hey, if I drop the doll down immediately, the hunter hits the doll and finds me immediately, I'm absolutely cooked, especially with a, you know, a fast chase meta currently in season 33. But if she just plays a little bit more safe, at least she can still decode on chair. So like 20-30 seconds is kind of necessary for mech to get herself prepped and ready to go with the decoding so she can rush this hunter. But right now in rank, from what I'm seeing with Opera and Ivy meta, you're gonna have a little bit of a harder time, my friend. And Goldman recently being introduced to rank as well. Like a lot of survivors are getting hit pretty early on towards the game, so like there's just that annoying part of, you know, playing mech. You're trying to rely on your teammates, but if your teammates start doing bad, you're absolutely gobbled up. But if your teammates do good, you're absolutely flying. But it's still just way too risky. It is still just way too risky for mechanics. So mech is a part of team comp dependent. Next will be forward. Forward will be up. Okay, so we're gonna move forward down to solo ranker. He was versatile last season, but we're gonna move him down this season this time. And I do think I'll probably put him behind coordinator. Now, as a rescuer, he's not a bad rescuer because he could use his rugby balls to actually go straight towards the chair to prevent any double hit scenarios. But as a harasser, in a sense, I don't think he's the best anymore. But let's just talk about what forward has. Forward has a rugby ball in which it decreases by 16.7% each second you use it. So if you use this rugby ball for 6 seconds, the rugby ball will be fully depleted. But of course, that's not the only thing what a forward can do. Forward can utilize this rugby ball and hit the hunter, and during this knockback phase, if the forward manages to push the hunter back towards a wall or some type of obstacle, let's say sculptors, statues, anything that is considered an obstacle, they will be stunned for a certain period of time. The more rugby ball you consume, the longer they will be stunned. Most of the times what forward do is they will either start mid-kite harassing for the first kiter early game to buy more time for, you know, the first kiter, or to allow the first kiter to transition into a better area to contain, or they will harass right after they rescue. For example, what forward mains will do is they'll rescue and then the hunter hits them, they'll get a survivor off chair, and then they'll pull a ball and immediately 360 hit the hunter back to allow survivors to pull more distance away from the hunter. Now, we will talk about this first before we move on towards external trait. This is not bad for forward, but also at the same time I feel like for forward, there's more ways to counter him now. You can use Mischievous to basically prevent forward from being able to easily balloon rescue against you because of the 20% pickup speed from the hunters. And right after, when the forwards decide to stun you right after they rescue, if the hunter has warp, they can also immediately, right after they finish the stun, they can just use warp to catch up towards the survivor ASAP anyways. So what does that mean? That means you wasted like a good 50% of your ball for that one stun, and it just gets fully countered by warp. Of course, if the hunter didn't use warp, that's good for you, but most of the times, look, if the hunter didn't use their trait yet, it's either going to be an excitement or a warp that you're gonna go up against. And like, I do think it's also the fact that if forward harass is too late and warp is up and ready to go right after its initial first use, it's still a bit of a waste. Like, yes, I know Cypher Rush is important, but sometimes as a forward main, you need to understand when you need to use your ball, when to harass and when not to harass. But aside from that, let's move on towards his external trait. So Ford actually has 2 buffs and 1 nerfs, 2 good external traits and 1 bad external trait. So the first one is Athletic, in which his obstacle vaulting speed is increased by 20%, his putting speed is increased by 50%, and the recovery rate of, forward being stunned is decreased by 15%, which means whenever the forward stuns the hunter, their recovery rate is decreased by 15%. So like, forward can by technicality stun the hunter for a very long time if they know how to use their ball correctly. Now the next buff, the next external trait buff is Struggle, in which his struggle speed is increased by 10%. On average, Survivor takes 18 seconds to struggle off from a hunter's balloon, but if it's forward only takes 16 seconds. Right? Wait, no, sorry. On average, Survivors take 16 seconds, but for forward, he'll take maybe 14 seconds to actually struggle free. So like, forward has a faster struggle speed compared to any other Survivor. Now, his debuff really is just his Cypher decoding progress, in which it is decreased by 30%. So like, forward right now is one of the slowest decoders in the game compared to like Mercenary and Wildling. Theirs is only 25%. But comparing to those two as well, forward is a much better harasser type rescuer compared to the other two. Now, of course, Mech still stands on top with 33% current season, but forward 30%, it's a little bit annoying, but you definitely do need your survivors to decode AS. Well, you definitely need your survivors to contain or to decode your Cypher machine for you to be able to go into harass or just to rescue, honestly. Honestly, for forward, because of the fact that there is now, there's now a persona trait that can counter him, there's also more external traits for hunters to use, such as excitement and the addition of warp. It's a little bit harder now for forward to actually be able to fully utilize, his kit. And I do think, because current day meta is all about Cypher Rush and guarantee rescues, forward who is prone to Terror Shocks, forward who is prone to basically gets countered by his harass, and forward who is a slow decoder, he currently really isn't that well suited for rank. Now, he is still a good character to play in rank if you're by yourself, but like, usually in a 4-man team against a really good hunter, you would preferably like to play a character that is more safely when it comes with that is more safe to rescue, decodes faster and has a better chance of harassing, such as Prospector, who can harass and doesn't have any decoding debuff, Batter, who can recycle his items as much as possible, and yeah, like, those two are just way better than forward currently. And like, Batter decodes faster than forward as well, so like, there's that too. Now, I won't deny forward's control is a little bit easier. Not easier as in it's easier to play him, easier as in he's more flexible in how to do really sharp turns with his ball, with his rugby ball. But yeah, for this season, forward is going to move down to solo ranking. He will receive a buff, right? It's not this season. Maybe at the end of next season he will receive a buff. We'll see how that goes for now, but forward is a part of solo ranking. Now, next will be the Mind's Eye. For me, the Mind's Eye is still really good high guarantee type of character. Yes, she is pretty map dependent, but she is a little bit similar to Lawyer because she does have her mini wall hack as well. Now, the difference between TME, the Mind's Eye, and Lawyer is the Mind's Eye actually has a cane. External trait is called Echo. in which when she walks around, she will start tapping the cane on the ground for her to be able to see nearby objects. Now, the hunter will also be shown towards her as well, but she needs to be within a good, decent, close vicinity near the hunter to be able to see where the hunter is. This cane does not deplete in cooldown, but because of this as well, TME cannot change items, or else it doesn't really suit her lore, let's just say. But of course, for the Mindset as well, when she is able to strike her cane, in which there's a 50-second cooldown, and when she strikes her cane, she's able to notify all survivor what hunter it is and where the hunter is as well. During this strike form too, within the first, I'm quite sure, 6-7 seconds, depending on how close you are towards the hunter, the interaction speed is decreased by 30, 22, and then 14%. So then like it's between 6.8 meters to 25.3 meters, or all over the map. So like if TME is near the hunter, 6.8 meters, the interaction speed is decreased by 30%. If it's 25.3 meters, which is like, I'm quite sure at the edge of tinnitus range, it's decreased by 22%. And of course, if it's global, then the interaction speed is decreased by 14%. So like this decreased interaction speed is for vaulting, breaking pallets, picking survivor up balloons, attack recovery animation, and if I'm not wrong, chairing the survivor on the chair as well, on the rocket chair as well, excuse me. But not only that, TME also has a movement speed buff. She gains a 25% movement speed boost. Well, she walks 25% faster, but when she changes from walking to running, she gets a 30% movement speed boost for 2 seconds and a 10% interaction boost, which is basically vault boost for 2 seconds as well. Now, of course, there's a 55-second cooldown on this, you know, external trait on her skill abilities too, so just keep that in mind. TME herself, she has a 23% decoding buff, in which she basically is the fastest decoder on the team, meaning that the hunter kind of do have to chase after the TME no matter what. Because if you let her out there, she's able to finish one cipher machine in 65 seconds. And being able to notify all survivors where the hunter is, all survivor can just rotate away from the hunter early game, and then make the hunter have a harder time into chasing after certain survivors. Because like, if the survivors know what the hunter is, they can strategize themselves, saying, okay, it's a wax artist and I'm playing gardener. I need to go towards maybe shack or to go towards tight corner areas and pull distance, so I don't allow wax artists to get wax easily on me and give him a free hit, etc, etc. Which is why I think TME is really tight guarantee. You're able to tell your survivors what hunter it is, so then survivors can strategize themselves. And for TME main, you have all kind of buffs and you force the hunter to chase after you. You're most likely able to guarantee 60 seconds because you're always designated to be at the strongest containment area possible. For example, hospital, in Sigurd Hospital. On Moonlit, you can say first stop, or at tents. At Leo's Memories, it'll be 2-story. At Arms Factory, it'll be factory, and then so on and so forth. Right, so like for TME, for me, honest be to God, a really good character because of her supportability and her containability. Now, she does have one external trait debuff, which is Fragile. This Fragile decreases her obstacle vaulting speed by 22%. So she does vault very slow as well. So she's very, very, very prone to terror shocks when it comes to vaulting pallets or windows. So like, that's something we have to be careful about. But still a very nice tight guarantee character because of the supportability and being able to allow survivors to strategize, knowing what hunter it is and where the hunter is coming from. Okay, next is Perfumer. Perfumer will be a part of Versatile for me. I think she still remains on Versatile no matter what, but maybe on the low end of Versatile, so not better than Lawyer. Definitely not better than Lawyer. Now, what does Perfumer have? Perfumer has 3 perfume bottles in which she can use, and whenever she gets hit during this time as well, she can perfume back to revert back to full health. Meaning, if Perfumer was initially at full health, she used perfume, the hunter hits her, she can perfume back and go back to full health in this case scenario. Now, why will Perfumer be better than Magician? It's because Perfumer has a little bit of a higher skill ceiling compared to Magician. When the hunter hits Perfumer, the hunter will go into attack recovery animation, but when the hunter hits Magician's Illusions wand, they will not go into attack recovery animation. To be honest with you, if if Magician's Wand forces the hunter to go into attack recovery animation, I will put Magician higher than Perfumer, because Perfumer has a higher chance of error too. But honestly speaking, most of the time, even if you do miss a perfume or use your, well, even if you do use your perfume too early by accident, perfume time is only 9 seconds. Perfume cooldown is only 9 seconds. So like, if you can drop a paladin or take a window speed boost or use flywheel, you should be still grand and golden for you to, you know, like utilize your second perfume bottle ASAP. But like, if you do kind of make an error and you use your perfume too slow because of pin issues or because of some other issues, reflex issues, then yes, you will have kind of a bit of a harder time. But like, it's not like your bottle will be fully, you know, denied, because you can still utilize your perfume early, run away, and if the hunter wants to chase after you, they can, and you can just perfume back immediately, so then the hunter has to double back to chase after you. Now, the bottle lasts 5 seconds, right? So then, like, if you do use it early, you can run away for 5 seconds, and if the hunter decides to stand near the perfume, you can just run. You don't need to turn back at all. You can just run. But if the hunter decides to go after you, you can just immediately perfume back before the hunter uses their attack animation and maybe drop a paladin, vault a window, wall vault a pallet, yada yada hoo. And it's also good in 2-story areas too, because what Perfumer can do is she can drop a perfume, she can use a perfume, drop down, and then perfume back up if the hunter decides to, you know, jump down. So like, a lot of times the hunter has to wait for a perfume bottle to be over before they actually get off 2-story settings, which is why like that 5 second window is going to be able to help you to pull quite a bit of a distance. It definitely will help you pull quite a bit of a distance as well. Now, aside from that, Perfumer does have 2 external traits in which they are considered a debuff. The first one is Blackout, in which whenever Perfumer misses a calibration, the reduced decoding progress will be reduced 3 times as much compared to normal survivors. So normal survivors, when they fail calibration, the decoding progress will return by 1%, but for Perfumer, it'll be decreased by 3%. And for the second one, it's called Special Physique, in which her healing speed is increased by, the time for her to heal, the time it takes for her to heal is increased by 15%. So she takes 15% longer to heal as well. Now, honestly, you might say, hey, but isn't this worse than Magician? In which I will say, no, not really. Not really, because most of the times you won't fail your perfume bottles as Perfumer. Most of the times you won't. And if you compare it to Magician, a lot of times what hunters will do is they'll just do, you know, a sideways hitch to hitch over the Magician's illusion and then get a hit on Magician even if he is invisible. And I also do think, like, look, whenever the hunter hits Perfumer during perfume mode, there's still an attack recovery animation for 3 seconds. So that's 3 second extra bot for Perfumer, honestly. And like, during that 3 second time, since perfume bottle is only 6 second cooldown, Perfumer only needs to contain for 6 seconds before her next perfume bottle is up as well. So like, what you can conclude here is Perfumer has a shorter item cooldown, Perfumer can body block or buy more time, and Perfumer, basically, if she is first chase, she can contain for a long time. She can bare minimum guarantee like 70-80 second containment. And even if she's not first chase, she can stand in between pallets to force the hunter to actually hit her. But then, like, even if the hunter does hit her, she can just use perfume bottle and then, like, you know, oh yeah, I can just perfume back immediately and drop down the pallet and then like force whoever I'm trying to body block to run away even further. So like, for Perfumer compared to Magician, Perfumer allows the hunter to, you know, say, hey, I'm gonna stay here until you decide to hit me, or you have to hit me, or like, oh, you can wait for my perfume to be over, but then I can just perfume back. And even if my perfume does fail, it's okay, I can still use it one way or another. Right, compared to Magician's Wand, yes, your location is revealed towards your survivors, but like, it's also the same for Perfumer, right? If the Perfumer gets hit during perfume bottle mode, you're going to be able to see where the hunter is anyways, who's highlighted in red. So like, it doesn't really matter. Perfumer still is above Magician on that side note as well. And like, Perfumer's only debuff really is the healing debuff. Like, most of the times Perfumer won't fail calibration unless they need to know where the hunter is, but most of the time they won't. So yeah, Perfumer is a part of versatile. Now then, next is Cowboy. Cowboy is also a part of solo ranking, but I think I'm just gonna put him as head of Forward and Magician and Thief. So for Cowboy, he has his lasso, in which he can lasso pallets, cipher machines, survivors on balloon, and if I'm not wrong, any interactable object, I think. But I do think it's mainly pallets, cipher machines, and survivors. Like, these are the main three. Okay, so when Cowboy lassos a survivor, a moving survivor, or misses a survivor, it consumes 10% of lasso. When Cowboy lassos a survivor on Rocketeer or on balloon, it decreases it by 35%. And when the Cowboy lassos pallets, cipher machines, or hunters, yes, hunters is another one, the lasso is depleted by 20%. So like, from a Cowboy's point of view right now, Cowboy A, he can contain for very long because he can use his lassos 5 times to pull distance away from the hunter, and each time you use your lasso you do gain a movement speed boost as well for a certain amount of time, right? And so like, you have quite a lot of options. If you're in open area, you can lasso the hunter to dodge the hit. If you are near a pallet or a cipher machine, you can lasso the pallet to pull distance away from the hunter. And then like, he's also a really good harasser as well compared to Forward, in my opinion, because he's a better balloon harasser. Why? Even with Mischievous, you can't really counter a Cowboy's balloon harass. You're basically playing a real long mind game, because I feel like most of the times you're not able to have a fast enough reflexes drop down the survivor who's on balloon, and like for Cowboy as well, whenever he lassos a survivor on balloon, it increases their struggle progress by 10%, and Cowboy can do this 3 times. So by technicality, if a Cowboy successfully lassos the survivors twice, they're most likely guaranteed to be able to struggle free the next time. Yes, when Cowboy lassos the survivor, they're still in incapacitated state, but at least Cowboy can bring them far away from the chair, so it takes the hunter even longer time to chair the survivor and allows the survivor even longer time to struggle. So like, for me personally, Cowboy is a really good harasser. Not only that, Cowboy also has this external trait called Protective, in which if Cowboy has a female survivor on him, right, Cowboy will tank 2 hits. So it means that Cowboy will go down if he's at full health, and the female survivor will still stay alive. But if the Cowboy is carrying a male survivor, both the Cowboy and the male survivor will receive a hit each. Cowboy is really good with, a full female team comp. Right, Cowboy is really good with a full female team comp. So like, for a Cowboy main, usually you would want the harass to buy enough time for cipher machine progress to be done as well. And Cowboy works really well with Gardener, in which, hey, Gardener can break a chair, and then the hunter has to drop down the survivor to fix the chair, and then if Cowboy lassos immediately, that's 20% extra struggle speed for the survivors. So like, isn't that just brilliant? But Cowboy does have a little bit of a debuff too. He does have this debuff called Wild, in which he decodes 10% slower than other survivors, right? So he does have a 10% innate build decoding debuff. But when he is decoding with other male characters or the mechanic style, he decodes 30% slower with double decoding. But if he decodes with female survivors, he decodes 10% faster. So like, POV, you decode with female survivor, you gain normal decoding speed. You decode with male survivor or a doll, you gain 30% decoding debuff. So yeah, oof moment. Oof moment. So kind of a bit of a playboy trait right there, but yeah, don't decode with male characters, or just decode by yourself. Now to be honest with you, when double decoding, it doesn't really matter that much as well. So like, honestly, who cares on that side note? But you know what, overall for Cowboy, still a really good character. He also has another external trait called Hero, in which if he pallet stuns a hunter, they get stunned 20% longer, which is why most of the times you see Cowboy mains bring great power, in which if you stun a pallet, if you strike the hunter with a pallet, their stun time will be increased by 10, 15/20%. So by technicality, you can actually increase the stun duration by 40% if you're playing Cowboy, and if you manage to pallet stun, of course, the hunter. So like a lot of times the hunter will be really worried about, you know, getting pallet struck by you. But like overall for Cowboy, a good enough harasser, I would say better than forward, a good enough kiter, because he can lasso pallet cipher machines and hunters 5 times. A good harasser because he can balloon harass or buy enough time. Like, look, even if the survivor doesn't struggle free, you've done your job. You're able to harass at a distance. You're able to buy enough time for your survivors to decode more cipher machines, and you're basically just there hooplaying and enjoying life. In a nutshell. Now, of course, when you harass, when you balloon rescue a survivor and they're still incapped, you should play around a little bit and then drop the survivor down just so you can have your lasso to be ready, because lasso cooldown is like 9/10 seconds. So you would like to buy enough time there so then you can lasso again and buy more time for survivors to decode. So like this is kind of where Cowboy comes in really clutch. Cowboy is also really good when it comes to Mikai supporting as well. If you want your survivor, if you think, oh, I'm not going to be able to make it towards the next containment area, if a Cowboy's nearby, they can just lasso you from a distance and then drop you down and be like, yep, you're on your own right now, have a good time, I'm just here to support. So honestly speaking, yes, Cowboy is really good, but just no one plays him, sadly. Now the next will be Female Dancer. Female Dancer, I think Female Dancer should be a part of Versatile regardless of what happens. Honestly speaking though, Female Dancer is pretty flexible. She is pretty versatile. She is pretty flexible, especially in rank 2. You don't really see her much in tourneys, but she's definitely usable in tourneys, but I just tend to think not many people use her in tourneys because of the Opera and Ivy, you know, meta. But like in rank against any other hunter, she's still very good. She is still very good. So, Female Dancer has 3 music boxes in which she can switch between the 2 modes. The first mode is a fast music box in which she can increase the interaction speed, movement speed of the survivors if they are inside the music box. And there's another mode called the slow music box in which she can decrease the hunter's interaction speed and movement speed if the hunter is inside the music box. Now, of course, even if the survivor / the hunter exits the music box range, there is still a lingering effect for 2 seconds. So then the hunter or the survivor will still be buff / debuff for an extra 2 seconds. For Female Dancer herself, this is a really nice way of being able to support survivors during their containment, or just to give a hunter a little bit of a debuff as well when it comes to rescuing or just hunter chasing after any other type of survivor. For Female Dancer herself, she's able to ballet inside these boxes for her to be able to pull distance away from the hunter. Sometimes if you get towards your music box when it has already been pre-deployed, you can ballet for the first time, and if you're still within that music box range, you can ballet for the second time. So the first time it goes a right curve, and then the second time it goes a left curve, if I'm not wrong. I'm quite sure that's how it works, unless it's vice versa, left curve and then right curve. But like, overall, what I would say is Female Dancer is really good in this regards because she can just deploy the music box down and it will stay on the field for 5 minutes. And 5 minutes by technicality is like a good enough Cypher Rush game. Usually Cypher Rush only takes like 3.5 to 4 minutes for Cypher Machines to be done, but the music box is left there for 5 minutes. So that is pretty long, and that's side note too, right? So like, you as a Female Dancer main, by technicality, you could drop the music boxes down early, but I don't really recommend it. I suggest you to do it like maybe near where the survivor has been shared, just so they have an easier time of rebound kiting. That's what I honestly suggest, but you know what, do whatever is best for you. Now, not only that, Female Dancer also has an external trait called Acrobatics, in which this allows her to gain a 30% movement speed boost for 3 seconds after falling from a height. It doesn't matter how high the fall is, as long as she is dropping down from a certain like place, she will gain this movement speed. So like, which is why sometimes you don't really see Female Dancers bringing knee-jerk reflexes in Leo's Memories, in like big maps like, you know, Chinatown, Ever Sleeping Town, Moonlight River Park, where there's 2 drop areas and they bring flywheel instead. This is the kind of the reason why, because like, you know, 30% increased movement speed for 3 seconds, and then there's only a cooldown of 40 seconds. It's honestly not a bad trade-off. So like, you know, also for Female Dancer, she's a really good Cypher Machine rusher as well, because if she does deploy her fast music boxes down, they will stack, and you can decode a Cypher Machine ASAP. And like sometimes as well, you can kind of just deploy a slow music box and a fast music box down. Like you can debuff the hunter once and then buff your survivors as well, just so like it's easier for the survivor to contain, I guess. And like for fast and slow music box, it depends on the character too, because like you can use fast music box to dodge bombs or to dodge, you know, chips or hits, but then you can also use, you know, slow music box to slow down the hunter, like attack recovery animation when it's chair rescuing or pallet destroying or window vaulting speed as well. So like for female dancer, she does have a lot of usage across the map. She's just not I know she's not using tourney that much, but that's really only because, you know, there's only a best of 3s in tourneys, and like with Opera, Ivy, and Goldman coming out, I don't. Well, against Goldman she's good, but against Opera and Ivy, I don't recommend it really that much. So yes, that's that for female dancer. Next will be Seer. Seer will also be a part of meta. We're gonna put Seer on the very front here for lots of reasons, and of course we'll get into it. So what does Seer have? Seer has an owl early game in which he can use it to protect himself or his teammates, but of course the small downside of this is per each owl you use, you will gain a 10% decrease on vaulting, right? So that's a taxing external trait. And of course for early game as well, you will need to get your owl to move across the map to look or rotate around every other survivor before you can actually use it too. Therefore, in the case of if a woo just teleports towards you immediately and you were caught off guard, you can't use the owl just yet. It's usually around the 15 to 20 second mark your owl actually comes back after it marks every survivor, but usually during this time as well you would start rotationing around the map to find the most suitable cipher machine to also decode. For Seer here as well, he has the Grey Eye external trait in which it allows him to see the hunter immediately when the game starts, so at least he knows what type of hunter it is. Therefore, you shouldn't really, you know, get surprised by any teleportation hunters like Woo or Ivy and just rotate away instead and wait until your owl comes back. And of course, another one of its good external traits is Prophecy, in which when he sees the hunter, he's able to see the hunter through walls for 5 seconds as it will be outlined in red. But why is Seer of part of meta, you might ask? Well, there's quite a good few reasons for it. Reason number one being the fact that Seer has an innate owl initially early game, meaning the fact that even if he isn't the first chase, he is able to give an owl towards his survivor to block 1 normal damage. Of course, the hunter will gain a 30% increased attack recovery speed, but by that time it doesn't really matter because the survivor would have been able to rotate towards the next nearest pallet/window. And of course, the owl stays on the survivor's body for 8 seconds, so if the hunter decides not to hit the survivor, they will gain an 8-second free containment time. So that's point number one. Point number two is the fact that Seer can regenerate the owl as much as he wants. To be honest with you, Seer's owl regen time isn't really that long. If I am not wrong, it is around 20-30 seconds for the owl to regenerate. Of course, you are going to have to look back at the hunter to actually gain these additional owls. But usually when it comes to Seer mains are really good at tie kiting and looking back while kiting. So like most of the times, a lot of the Seers would be able to get like 1 owl or their second owl out before they're on their second chair. And I say this most of the time. Because like, when it comes to Seer, it's kind of very similar to playing any other type of character. You want to play paddle mind games, or you want to, like, you know, get as much owl as possible. And this makes it really easy for Seer to get his second owls as well, because like, compared to Doctor, Seer's paddle mind game is a little bit easier to play around, because like by technicality, you can play around short pallets, you're basically looking at the hunter, and while you're playing pallet mind games, you're regenerating owls. And if you really do miss a pallet mind game, you can just bring the owl up immediately to body block yourself, so you still maintain the full health there too. We have seen as well in tourneys that, you know, Seer kiting against Opera Singer, one of the better characters, one of the best hunters, let's say, in the game, being able to farm like a second or a third owl is already, you know, a very, very, very strong point of Seer. He has been nerfed before as well, but we won't talk about that because it's like, you know, 6 seasons already, so there's no point in me bringing it up all the time. But you know, that 8-second time, if you don't hit, you're kind of losing out, but if you do hit, you're also losing out as well, because it just allows the survivor to go wherever they want to go next. For Seer's Owl as well, not only is it utilized for first kites, it can also be utilized for rescuers if they want to no damage rescue. It can also be utilized for survivors that get off chair immediately, so you can help them to rebound kite maybe a little bit. And it can, you know, also be used in situations where you're like, oh, I need to vault over those windows, well, I'll just take the owl and vault over the window to prevent the terror shock. Yes, this applies for chairs as well. And you know, like, since it is pretty easy to actually farm the owls, like once you get used to kiting while looking back, which, you know, is kind of the skill like all survivor needs. It's not just Seer that needs this skill. Every survivor main should know how to look back while kiting, because you don't want to get red light mind gamed. But of course, because of this too, most of the time what Seer mains do is, okay, you may say, okay, what if it's Seer against single hunters that moves fast? Honestly to God, just put the pallet down and play pallet mind games against them. Usually, most of the times, you would be able to get your owls out. And then, like, against chimp hunters as well, like Bonbon or Sculptor, you should be mainly focused on dodging the chips instead of the normal hits, because like a lot of times the hunter might just be too focused on chipping, in which it does kind of hinder the movement a little bit. So as a Seer main, you can kind of utilize this to your advantage point as well to contain for as long as possible. And you know, most of the time Seer mains do bring knee-jerk reflex or window speed boost, in which, like, you know, knee-jerk reflex counters both Bonbon and Gala, and then Flywheel also both counters Bonbon and Gala. When it comes, like, Flywheel counters Sculptor's basic hit, and then Flywheel counters Bonbon's chip hit. So like, with that in mind as well, Seer just has a lot of potential in this game too. He is not highly banned in tourneys, because if it's first two picks, then of course, you know, like, he will be moved on towards permabans. But a lot of the times the survivor teams do decide to pick Seer first, just to go up against the Opera or the Ivy, because, you know, it's a really good and safe pre-measure or precaution to have against, you know, meta characters like these. So of course Seer definitely won't fall down on this tier list, as he will be maintaining his meta position in season 33. Next will be Embalmer. Embalmer will be a part of tie guarantee. As all good introverts we are, Embalmer is, actually speaking, not a bad character to play if you want to guarantee a tie against any type of hunter. For Embalmer himself, he works on any map. Yes, big maps usually are better, but even if it's small maps, he is still pretty good on them, as, you know, he can still guarantee the tie. So what does Embalmer have? Embalmer has his coffin, in which the external trait is called Embalm. He needs to deploy the coffin down early game and then rotate away from his coffin during this time as well. Or even he doesn't necessarily have to rotate away from the coffin. He can just place the coffin near a really good containment area and then just immediately start decoding. And when the hunter comes, he can slowly but surely rotate away from the area in which he left his coffin in. Now for Embalmer, Embalmer is one of those characters in which he's able to self-resurrect himself, in which it means that he can self-rescue. What is good about self-rescuing is the fact that you can still allow your survivors to continuously cypher rush no matter what happens. Even if Embalmer downs within for the first 30-40 seconds in towards the game, that's still okay. He can just self-resurrect himself and then contain by himself, and you can maybe even just sell him for that full chair self, just for the, you know, tree cipher machine to be popped. But of course, for Embalmer 2, I do think it's with the fact that, like, look, I know, yes, most of the times Embalmer mains, they don't kite well, but even if they don't kite well, because of the fact that he can self-resurrect, it just means that all survivor can continuously decode, and by the time that the Embalmer has actually been fully eliminated, tree cipher machines will be done. So, like, in that case scenario, it's already a good startup for a tie game, right? And that is if Embalmer does really bad early game. Now, I'm not saying he will do really good as well, because Embalmer only has a coffin. He doesn't have any other items to contain aside from pallets and windows. Let's just be honest with ourselves. But when Embalmer self-resurrects himself, he gains a 7-second immunity from all types of damages, and of course with a 15-second tie turner time. Now, if you think about this, right, by technicality, he has a 7-second immunity and an 8-second tie turner right after the immunity ends. So, like, So like in a nutshell, it's like 3/4 of a Titan if he self-resurrects himself. But that's not it. If Embalmer's coffin is actually near somewhere where he wasn't, where it's far away, in which it forces the hunter to catch up to take time to catch up to him, or it's near certain containment areas where there are still pallets and windows remaining, there's a high chance of Embalmer still being able to rebound kite. Because of that 7-second immunity, it's kind of like a Seer's Owl. You're able to rotate away for 7 seconds to get towards the next near pallet or window, drop it down, and vault over, and then run away from this hunter as soon as you can. So like, for Embalmer himself, there is still a chance of rebound kiting. It may not be high, but the chance is still there. So like, there's just so much to keep in mind for Embalmer as well, even if you do bad as him. Like, as long as he can self-resurrect and just do whatever the heck he needs to do, it will always be 3 Cypher Machines done. Which is why, like, on the very, very, very low bar, he is tie guarantee bare minimum. Now, however high he can go up, it just depends on the team as well. But usually, I know people say, oh, but Embalmer is so good in tourneys. Yes, good in tourneys. That's the title we're on right now. Maybe for next season, I'll make 2 extra slots for different tiers. One might be niched, other one might just be, you know, tourney dependent. But for now, Embalmer is still a good tie guarantee character. But not only that, Embalmer can also stay on chair for 10% longer, in which it kind of just means, hey, more time for you to Cypher Rush. Kind of just reinforces what Embalmer is made for as well. Embalmer also has an external trait called Artist, in which if he sees the survivor's face, even for like 0.1 second, he's able to embalm the survivor and allow them to self-resurrect. This is usually really good if Embalmer is in the first chase and Embalmer just wants to run a little bit close to word, well, not too close to word, a good decent a good decent chunk of distance away from the chair, look at the survivor and run really far away and deploy the coffin maybe down at the corner, so it takes the hunter a really long time to catch up towards that survivor. Yes, that will also work as well for Embalmer. It might take a little bit more time, but it's much more worth it in the long run. It is definitely much more worth it in the long run. But aside from all that, Embalmer does have a debuff in which it's called Anxious, and as I said at the start of his character introduction as well, just like all good introverts, we don't like talking to any other people, and the moment we start doing that, we don't really get anxious, maybe we get shy, but Embalmer will be facing a 15% decoding debuff when decoding with any other survivors, so we also do have to keep that in mind. There is also one extra trait in which I don't really think it matters that much, and it's the fact that Embalmer can actually see where all survivors are standing or spawned early game. To be honest with you, with area selection mode, that doesn't really matter that much, but I guess in quick match, that is a good plus. Honestly speaking, a really good plus to have if you want to find a survivor's face ASAP and to give them the coffin. But yes, Embalmer, bare minimum is definitely still tie guarantee. Definitely could move up, but bare minimum tie guarantee. Now, Prospector. Prospector will be a part of Versatile. We'll put Prospector a little bit higher than Lawyer. Why? It's because Prospector has 2 magnets, and with these 2 magnets you can harass against the hunter, and you don't have any decoding debuff as well, which is why it makes him really good. For Prospector right now, what does he have? He has magnets in which he basically has 1 1/4 magnets early game. And for this season, it took him 60 seconds to recharge a magnet. Next season, it's gonna go up to 70 seconds, of course. But of course, since this is season 33, we're gonna stay with the season 33 tier list. So for magnets, honestly, it's not bad. Even if it's an increase from 60 to 70 seconds, I don't think it's too harsh. Why? Because it's a little bit similar to Priestess' situation. Priestess also takes 70 seconds to regenerate a portal, but she's still a very strong character. So for me, I don't think it's gonna negatively affect Prospector that much. But what does his magnets do? So Prospector is allowed to throw out a magnet, and he's able to throw it out at quite a bit of a long range as well. If the magnet lands on the hunter, and the Prospector is nearby, Prospector can either attract or repel the Hunter. When you attract the Hunter, right, the further the distance you attract, the longer the Hunter will be stunned. So you basically pull the Hunter towards a wall or some type of obstacle / object, then of course the Hunter will be stunned. Now, if you pull the Hunter to yourself, to your main body, the Hunter will not be stunned and they can basically get a free hit off you, so I don't recommend that. So that's what attract does. Now for Prospector's Repel, Repel only works when Prospector is near the Hunter. In this case scenario, Prospector will push the Hunter back, and depending on how far the Prospector pushed the Hunter back, if you push them to an obstacle, they will be stunned. The longer distance they are pushed back and then they hit an obstacle, the longer they are stunned. Just to keep that in mind. Now, when there's a survivor near the Hunter and near Prospector, if the survivor is within 15.2 meter radius of Prosy, the stun will be weakened by 32%, which is why most of the times Prospector are standing behind the Hunter, right, when they're chasing after some survivor. So when you pull the Hunter back, there won't be a weakened stun effect. So just something to keep in mind. But of course, if the Hunter is stunned when a survivor is on Balloon, it will be a guaranteed 3.47 second stun. So the weaken effect will not come true in that case scenario. Of course, Prospector's magnet can also be thrown on survivors too, but in that case scenario, it really is just like, you know, trying to usually do that if you want to get rid of certain abnormal effects such as Gamekeeper's traps, such as Ivy's 100% fear stacks, or even, what else is there, I wonder? I think those are the main two. Oh yes, or even the Wax Artist 100% Wax. That's kind of where you actually put it on survivors in a nutshell. Or if you want survivors to actually go towards you ASAP, you can try attract them or something like that, but I don't see survivors doing that much. Now, for Prospector, he's a part of Versatile, not only for his magnets but also for his external trait buffs. He has one external trait called Outdoor Skills in which it increases his healing speed by 10%. He has a disruption effect in which his calibration difficulty is increased by 30%, but because of this, Prospector can actually easily get that perfect calibration. So this is more of a buff than a nerf. For Prospector mains right now, they basically always get 100% perfect golden calibrations, which means they always get that, you know, 1 or 2% extra decoding progress from the calibration effect. So that's more of a buff than a nerf. Now, the last part is Attraction, which is also another external trait in which he gains a 50% movement speed boost for 2 seconds whenever he runs towards a metallic object such as cipher machines or lockers. And of course, this will trigger once every 80 seconds. This, honestly speaking, is quite game changing because sometimes you don't necessarily have to be in front of it. There could be a wall between you and the locker and you're still able to gain that, you know, 50% movement speed boost. And during that time as well, that's honestly speaking pretty fast too. Like 50% for 2 seconds. And knee-jerk reflex is like 50% for 3 seconds. Therefore, you know, it's 2/3 of a knee-jerk reflex, so like that is still pretty fast. Now for Prospector being a part of Versatile as well, he doesn't have any decoding debuffs despite being a really good container and harasser. He is also a really good balloon harasser too, because if he has 2 magnets and he manages to stun you once and the survivor's on balloon, it's a guaranteed 3.47 stun, but then he can throw his magnet out for the second time. And during this time as well, he can push the Hunter back to allow the survivor to have a better chance of rebound kiting instead of being able to tunnel hit the survivor down when the survivor has been balloon rescued too. But even if you don't manage to balloon rescue, as long as Prospector can harass the Hunter at a safe distance and buy time for the cipher machine to be decoded, that honestly speaking is what matters the most. You don't necessarily have to get the survivors, you know, rescued off balloon. What matters the most right now in current day meta is cipher rushability. And of course, if you can do that in a safe distance and not take any damage, that's kind of what matters the most, which is why like Cowboy is a part of solo ranking, which is why like Prospector is better than Cowboy, because he can stun, he can decode fast, and he has really good containability too, and he can regenerate items as well. So like for Prospector, he has so many good parts that you know, well, he basically doesn't have any debuffs. He really just doesn't have any debuffs. Yes, it takes skill to learn him, but like, it's honestly speaking not that bad at the end of the day, really. So Prosy is honestly speaking, a really good character to play in rank still. So Prospector will be a part of Versatile. Now, next is Enchantress. Enchantress is a part of Team Comp Dependent, and we are going to put Enchantress in front of Gardener, and there is a little bit of a reason for that too. Now, for Ench last season, she was a part of Solo Ranker, in which we've talked about multiple times how, yes, even though she doesn't have any items, she can still at least still kite against current day meta hunters, in which I do think right after the meta shift, especially from the hunter side, Ench doesn't perform as well as we originally think she would in this season. And of course, with less Enchantress coming out to be played as well, I think moving her down would not be a bad option too. But for Enchantress, what does she have? She has an Ape Curse, in which when she contains a hunter and the hunter is within a certain radius, I'm quite sure it's within like heartbeat radius, you're able to slowly but surely gain stacks of curses, in which you're able to stun a hunter with 1 stack or do a long duration stack with 3 like 3 stuns at once. Weird English. But overall for Enchantress, the thing about her is she doesn't have any initial stacks early game, which makes her really bad. It's very similar to a Lucky Guy situation, but she does gain her items pretty fast as well. I think within the first 15 to 20 seconds of containing, you should be able to get 1 stack, but that 1 stack can't be countered by either Rage, which decreases the stun time by 10%, or Desperate Fight if you continuously stun the hunter multiple times within 20 seconds. Right, so like there's just so much things to keep in mind for Ench. And not only that, with the current day meta of Opera and Ivy, she just can't really excel as much. You can also maybe say, hey, Wax Artist is an issue, hey, or even Reptilian is an issue because they can just catch up to you and jump on you immediately. Bloody Queen and Axe Boy with a fast catch up. Even Goatman is an issue when it comes to Enchantress, because that 1 small stun might not be able to do much, even though it seems like it will do a lot. But like with Desperate Fight, I don't think it's going to matter as much. And of course for Ench, not only does she have her Ape Curses, she can also gain Ape Curses by giving blessings to other survivors, in which blessing is given if the survivor is being healed by her or she is healing a certain survivor, in which if the survivor takes damage, Ench will gain a stack. But of course Ench has many downsides as well, in which previously she has been nerfed with the fact that you now gain your stacks 35% less when you are within 11.7 meter radius of a survivor, which means you can't really harass this Ench anymore, and she has a 20% healing debuff. Overall for Enchantress, I would say she is a fun to play character, but then the only issue with her right now in rank is because of the current meta changes, especially when it comes to hunters as well, and of course with the introduction of Goatman, I just feel like her standings in, you know, a tier like this isn't going to matter as much compared to any other survivor going against, you know, the current day meta hunters. It's kind of a little bit more similar, because like if you think about it, right, the recent buffed hunters are Soul Weaver, and then there's also Goatman coming out, and the Opera and Ivy is just there for the sake of it, really, because like they were always meta characters and they always will be meta characters. And I just feel like, especially in, you know, mid-tier rank, before you reach the high tier peak tier rank, you're only allowed to ban 1, and if you ban Opera, you're gonna come out with Ivy, in which it fully counters Ench, or if you decide to ban Ivy, you're gonna come out with an Opera, in which even if you do 1 stun, it's not gonna matter much because she can just catch up to you ASAP anyways. But I mean, overall her support is good if she can get stacks, but the if has to be highly emphasized, because you don't always have the time to heal someone because you can Decipher Rush, and you can't always go and harass because you don't have stacks during that harass time too. So like for Ench, it's very dependent in how she can be utilized properly. Either that she heals someone and then they go rescue, and then Ench goes as well to gain stacks and try balloon harass maybe, or she just has to be first chase, in which most of the time, if she is first chase, most of these hunter counter her really hard anyways. So for Enchantress for season 33, she's a part of Team Comp Dependent. Now, Wildling will be a part of Solo Ranker, so we're gonna decide to move Wildling up now for quite a few good reasons, and I do think one of the biggest reasons of moving Wildling up is because of the fact that his decoding speed is now the same as Mercenary. Before, Wildling's decoding speed was actually 30%, which makes him very, very, very slow. I'm quite sure it's very similar to Forward's decoding speed, but after Wildling's buff of, okay, instead of 30% decoding debuff, it's going to move up to 25%. This makes Wildling a really solid character because of the fact that what he has is that he has a board in which he's allowed to travel across the map, and he moves faster than a hunter when the board is actually max rage, and B, he can tank 2 hits before reaching the chair, which means that he cannot be stuffed by any hunter. Aside from Anne, I guess, if Anne paralyzes the Wildling wild board time, you can't get off the board until the paralysis is over, which is 10 seconds. But in a nutshell, currently for the Wildling, because of the fact that his decoding speed is faster than Forward and he's more of a guarantee rescuer compared to Forward, I do think Wildling does deserve to be on top as well. Especially with the fact that, like, in mid to low rank, where we're only when the hunter bans Mercenary or even First Officer, you can always just come out with the Wildling to guarantee a rescue from the hunter. And I do know that, yes, Wildling does have quite a bit of debuffs in which when he is off the board, he is not able to move as fast compared to normal survivors, in which he moves at a 10% debuff. If I'm not wrong, I'm quite sure it was a 10% debuff if he is off the board. But honestly speaking, most of the times, it's really hard to get a double down on a Wildling anyways right after he rescues, because then the survivor on chair will be able to rebound quite pretty well or just pull away, unless you're against Opera and Ivy. But what I would say most of the times is you don't necessarily need to use the board to go to the chair to get a rescue. You can potentially rescue and then get on board to try mid-Kai or rebound Kai harass for the survivors, in which there really is a lot of room here to play as well. For Wildling, he did get a buff in which his dash animation is now faster, so it makes it harder for the hunter to predict you. But I guess the hunter is still able to predict you, but then it just makes Wildling's life a little bit more easier, which isn't too bad. But you know what, overall I would say for Wildling is he, honestly speaking, isn't a bad character to use now, especially in rank. I know that there has been a lot of people saying Wildling is actually good, especially with how much he's being used in tourneys as well. But the reason why he's up currently is because of the fact that his decoding speed is now the same as Mercenary, and he can traverse around the map and he can tank hits. So I would say he's a really solid character right now to use as a rescuer. Next will be Acrobat. Acrobat is also a very solid character to use, especially in rank as well, because Acrobat has lots of items to use and he can regenerate his items pretty easily. So initially, Acrobat has 3 balls, and each of these balls are called a Sticky Bomb, Nitro Bomb, and Fire Bomb, in which respectively, one of them, which is Sticky Bomb, in which we call it a Mud Ball, it slows the hunter down by 30%. And then the other one is a Nitro Bomb, in which we call it a Snow Bomb in our streams. It reduces the hunter interaction speed by 35%. And of course, for Fire Bomb, you can nullify all hunters' abilities for 5 seconds, in which if you throw it at the hunter's face, you can nullify it for 8 seconds. In a nutshell, for Acrobat, it is pretty easy to gain as much balls as he wants. With 3 balls here, if he wants to regain a certain ball, there are certain conditions to be met. So, in order to get a Mud Ball, you need to rescue a survivor. In order to get a Snowball, you need to decode 150% Cypher Machine. And in order to get a Fireball, you need to be able to contain the hunter for 60 seconds. Now, each of these stats basically just say you can play Acrobat as a rescuer, you can play Acrobat as a container, or you can play Acrobat as a decoder. And no matter what happens, you will always have 4 balls as the Acrobat to use. So, for Acrobat to Acrobatic balls, in a nutshell, you have 3 early game, and no matter what you do, you'll always get 4. Sometimes you can get 5, sometimes you can get 6, it just depends on what you do, but most of the time 3 is more than enough. Compared to all the other characters too, such as Mercenary, Mercenary, Perfumer, Female Dancer, Magician, all these characters have only 3 items, and 3 items only. But I guess the difference between these characters and Acrobat is the fact that they can actually pick up items right after they finish theirs, but Acrobat needs to be able to regenerate his own items instead. Most of the times you might think, hey, survivors can pick up items, which might be better than Acrobat, but I would say Acrobat might be better in certain situations because sometimes you don't have enough time to actually go look for items in chests. So like if Acrobat really wants an extra ball, he can go rescue if he's at full health. If he really wants a snowball, he can just go decode another 50% Cypher Machine right after he finishes his. Or if Acrobat really wants to get a fireball, he can just stand nearby the hunter and play a little bit of harass to get a firebomb. So like for Acrobat, he has a lot of good perks for himself to use, and he's able to contain the hunter for a really long time as well, because per each bomb you're able to pull distance away and they're only 12 seconds in cooldown. And of course when you use these bombs you're able to vault over low obstacles, in which it means windows, pallets, or anything that is, you know, not too high for Acrobat to get stuck on or to crash into a wall. Now of course Acrobat does have a debuff perk in which it's called Half-Hearted. His gate opening speed is decreased by 30%, but this is really the only thing that he has. Most of the time Acrobat should be the one priming the Cypher and there's someone else near the exit gate most of the time, right? Sometimes you might be the only one at the exit gate because you're too far away from the Cypher Machine and to allow the other survivor to go to the gate, in which, you know what, so most of the times it's really just fine. It doesn't make too much of a difference, but I do think there are the odd occasions in which you really shouldn't be at the exit gate and you should be priming the Cypher Machine instead. But overall, Acrobat is a really good versatile character. Next is First Officer. First Officer goes on the very top of our list for versatile, and here is why. First Officer has 2 pocket watches, in which both of these pocket watches you can activate them 3 times for 10 seconds. And of course you need to be within a certain radius of the hunter, and per each activation the radius gets smaller. When the hunter is within this radius, First Officer is able to hallucinate the hunter into thinking that wrong one. First Officer is able to leave an illusion in which it is 1 second before his current action, which means, for an example, if First Officer immediately puts down a pallet, the illusion will come 1 second later and do the pallet drop down animation. Something like that, just to make you understand that a little bit. So it's like a little bit of a hallucination thing. Overall for First Officer, if he uses both pocket watch correctly, you're able to buy a guaranteed 60-second time, or a 60-second containment bare minimum against the hunter, which is already really good if the hunter decides to first chase you for some reason. If the hunter first chases you and you messes up your first pocket watch, that is still okay because you have a second pocket watch to use. Not only that, when First Officer uses a pocket watch each, he gains a 7% decoding speed boost, in which it maxes out at 14%, right? Now of course First Officer does have a 20% decoding debuff, but like if for each time he uses his pocket watch, that debuff basically gets cancelled out by a decoding buff. So like, oh, the first time you use the pocket watch, it's okay, you've only 13% decoding debuff. The second time you use a pocket watch, oh, you've only 6% decoding debuff, which really isn't that much as well. And of course, when it comes to First Officer 2, even if you do mess up your first containment, that's okay because he stays on chair for 20% longer than any other survivor. I'm quite sure First Officer stays on chair for the longest compared to any other survivor, in which he's able to stay on chair for 72 seconds. Because it's 20%, it decreases the chair countdown time by 20%. 60 seconds, 10% of 60 seconds is 6 seconds, and 20% is by 2, so that's 12 seconds, which means First Officer can actually stay on chair for 72 seconds, and that is really long. By technicality, right, 72 seconds is 1 full decoding speed progress by a normal decoder. Any decoder can finish a Cypher Machine in 71% if you just check the log files of all decoders. So like for First Officer, TLDR, very strong character to use, has a lot of buffs, and the only debuff really is the decoding speed. And when he rescues a survivor on chair, he is able to leave an illusion down, making it look like there's 2 First Officers on the field, and if the survivor that was on chair activates Tide Turner or uses their skills, of course the illusion will then disappear. Now, the hunter most of the times can just bring Nostalgic in order to see the survivor that's on chair. So like most of the time this doesn't really matter that much, or even the hunter can just look at the accessory effect at the back pocket of each survivor and see, oh wait, this is First Officer and this is the other survivor, and then you, generally speaking, won't get lost most of the times anyway. But First Officer still is a really good character. His decoding speed is good after using his pocket watches. He can guarantee rescues, and like if the hunter finds First Officer immediately right after chairing a survivor, First Officer can just buy that 30-second time. And first officer gains a 10% movement speed boost as well during pocket watch duration. So like, not only is it almost impossible for you to actually catch off first officer if you want them to become first chase, it's also very hard for first officer to stop a rescue. Now, first officer isn't a part of meta for 2 reasons. And reason number 1 is the fact that he can't tank a terror shock. So like, I mean, he is still a really good rescuer, but I do think it's the fact that, oh wait, he can get terror shock. That does make it a little bit of a, there's still a small percent of a chance that he will fail rescue. And the second reason also comes in with the terror shock. It's the fact that against chip hunters like Bomb or Sculptor, if he gets chipped or hit, he will activate his 5-second Titan cooldown. Even if he reactivates his pocket watch, it will only be activated once per each pocket watch used. So let's say, for example, if you one pocket watch and you can activate it 3 times, you get hit during the first activation, you activate it for the second time. If you get hit again, the Titan effect will not come in. So first officer is quite vulnerable against the likes of, you know, chip hunters such as Mad Eyes, such as Fool's Gold, such as Bonbon, Sculptor, Naiad could potentially be one as well. You could say Clerk, you could say Wax Artist as well, to be honest with you, because of Hot Wax and a normal hit. So like, there is honestly a lot that can counter first officers, but it doesn't really matter that much because they're not like, you know, characters that are meta hunters, right? You know, so like first officer is still very, very high up on top. Next is Barmaid. Barmaid will be a part of Versatile too, but I think we'll put Barmaid right around here in front of Perfumer. Barmaid is a really good character, especially as a assisted character, in which Barmaid has 2 doublings early game and 1 doofring early game, in which the doublings can be used to heal yourself while moving, and the doofring can be used as a movement speed boost for Barmaid and Barmaid only. When Barmaid is in the mainer, she gets 1 Dublin immediately early game, and then she can give this Dublin to any other survivor aside from 4 underage customers in this manner, which is Little Girl, the Mind's Eye, the Cheerleader, and if you just go, let me just check here real quick, and it is Coordinator. So these are the 4 characters that cannot consume the strong Dublin in order to get a heal. So of course, as normal as it is here in Europe that you can drink when you're above 18, it seems like we're following the American rule here of not being able to drink when you're below 21. But of course, for Barmaid, she's allowed to mix drinks as well, as we said before, right after you give the doubling. If you are at full health and you're mixing a drink, the drink mixing will only take, I think, 2 seconds or 1 second. But if you're at half full, the drink mixing might take just a tiny bit longer compared to the usual. When you drink a doubling as well, it takes 19 seconds to heal, which means most of the times what barmaids will do is they will give a doubling to the rescuer right after they've rescued, and during that 19-second time, they just need to buy enough time before the 30-second mark before half chair rescue and get a survivor rescued. But of course, when you are drunk and you want more, your fear radius will be reduced by half when you are during tipsy stage, which is when you're currently being healing. So of course, most of the times you do have to be careful. When you have Dublin, your fear radius is reduced by half. The hunter might be closer than you originally think it is when you have your heartbeat too. So like as Barmaid or as any other character, that's something that you really need to be careful about. But honestly, be the god though, Barmaid being able to heal a survivor while they're moving is already a really good thing, because if Barmaid wants to, she can give the doubling to the survivor and then make a doubling herself and then go body block for the survivor. And if Barmaid manages to body block, she can use her doofring as an extra movement speed boost to contain an extra few seconds to get that 19-second tipsy in and get Barmaid back to full health. Barmaid is not only a great healer, she is a really good container, as we just said there as well. She wastes no time usually when it comes to healing before rescuing or even healing before decoding. But of course, per each doubling drank, the survivor that has drunk the doubling will gain a 5% decoding debuff with a maximum of 2 stacks and 2 stacks only. Now, if Barmaid is first chase and she drinks her doubling twice, it doesn't really matter that much because she's first chase, she's not going to be able to get towards the cipher machine anymore. And even if the hunter leaves the Barmaid, look, that just means that you're going to chair a new completely survivor on the chair that needs to stay on chair for 60 seconds. That 10% decoding debuff isn't going to matter much to Barmaid if Barmaid is decoding with accelerated decoding speed as well. So like, Honest be to God though, Barmaid is a really good character with only a maximum of 10% decoding debuff on her hands. Next will be Postman. Postman will be a part of Team Comp dependent, but I think I'll move Postman right around here between Mech and Gardener. For Postman, yes, he did recently get a buff, but I don't think his buff mattered as much as we think it necessarily did. So for Postman right now, he can still send letters, but if he fails to deliver a letter, the letter will not go into cooldown. And what does Postman have? Postman has 6 letters, in which the first one is an urgent letter, in which it increases your movement speed by 10% for 15 seconds. Next is a farewell letter, in which you gain a 40% movement speed boost for 3 seconds right after you vault a window or a pallet. A tranquility letter, in which it increases your decoding speed by 10% for 30 seconds. And bravery letter, in which it increases your rescue speed by 30% and movement speed by 10% for 180 seconds when you're near a survivor on rocket chair. So this is really good for, you know, chip hunters. And an inspire letter, which increases vaulting speed by 10% for TME and for mechanic. And of course, a hope letter, which increases the exit gate opening speed by 15% and also showing where the dungeon is for 120 seconds. Now, for Postman, his buff was the fact that when Wick bites on towards the hunters, it will stun the hunter once and then it will slow them down by 35% for 2.5 seconds, if I am not wrong. But it doesn't really change the fact that Postman is still a main supporter, not a main kiter. You could potentially say, hey, when you bite on towards a hunter for 1 second, you can pull distance, and then with a 2.5 second 35% movement debuff, you can still pull even more distance compared to before, with a 35% movement debuff for, you know, for 5 seconds. In which I say I don't really disagree with you. But one of the reasons why Postman was a part of meta a good few seasons ago was because of the fact that his tranquility letter was 20% decoding buff for 30 seconds, right? And I do think when it comes to Postman 2, I feel like they added that buff just so then they can get the dog out to bite towards the hunter during attack animation. So then the hunter will not hit the Postman and then get the debuff, in which the debuff then wouldn't matter. But also, at the same time, I feel like this can also go really bad if the hunter already got the attack animation out and then Postman decide to bite for some odd reason. And I do think, right, Wick itself, when you throw him out to bite the hunter, he's a bit slow. Now, he does move fast when traversing across the map, but when you pull him out, he's a bit slow. So I do feel like the survivors have a good enough chance of messing up if they don't know what they're doing, in which most of the times they do know what they're doing, so thank goodness me. But overall, what I would say for Postman is he still isn't as good as we think he will be, and I don't think you will be able to see him anymore in tournaments. He's more of a play for fun character. Yes, he can be team comp dependent, but also at the same time his letters needs to be team comp dependent, because you can only get 3. You don't get to choose between the 6 letters. You get 3 letters each time, and you're like, okay, I want to give decoding boost 5 times to my survivors, but I can only give it twice because it's all randomized. Therefore, like, it's kind of a little bit luck oriented too. I mean, yes, early game you can give a decoding speed boost to someone, but then, like, you know, as the game progresses, you're going to be like, maybe I want a decoding letter but not a rescue letter, but it just doesn't give me a decoding letter for my survivors to decode on Cypher Rush. What I would say is, right, overall for Postman right now, if you want to make him better, you need to change the cooldown of mail from 60 seconds to 50 seconds, just so there's more chance of a decoding letter or a support letter to come out. Or maybe that might just be a tiny bit too strong. But overall, what I would say is a lot of the hunters in current day meta is able to chase after Postman with no problem at all. So like, his main kit is based on assist and not based on containment. But I do feel like his assist is a little bit underwhelming too. No, I mean, he can send letters to himself when he is first chase, but then like I'm quite sure he only gets half of the original effect. So there is also that. Wait, no, he actually gets the full effect, I think. Yeah, I think he gets the full effect, but there is also that too for Postman. So unless they decide to tune Postman's assist, I don't think Postman can stay up any higher than team comp dependence. But for current season 33, I think he's still down here no matter the adjustment he got. Now let's look at Gravekeeper. Gravekeeper belongs in... The thing with Gravekeeper is he's quite a nice character to have, but he isn't just used as much in rank. For this season, I'll put Gravekeeper in tie guarantee because of, you know, Wildling's buff, because of First Officer, and just because, you know, there's already 4 rescuers that are solo ranker and above. And most of the times in rank you wouldn't really choose Gravekeeper because he does have quite a bit of counters as well. But what does Gravekeeper have? Gravekeeper has 2 shovels in which you can dig underground and you're allowed to tank a normal hit before you get out of the ground. Now when Gravekeeper is in burrow mode, he does gain a 10% movement speed boost, but in exchange when the hunter hits his shovel, the hunter gains a 10% attack recovery animation. Overall for Gravekeeper, you can dig into the shovel and then get back out immediately and still maintain that shovel, but of course the duration of the shovel will be reduced by a certain amount of time. Now, the biggest question is, why do we, genuinely speaking, put Gravekeeper in tie guarantee when he was solo ranker last season? Well, if you think about it, when the meta shifts, everything shifts. Gravekeeper back then used to be very good against the likes of Sculptor and Bonbon, in which his shovel is allowed to tank 2 hits. But nowadays, with the introduction of Opera Singer, with the introduction of, Gamekeeper being meta as well, these type of characters are able to catch up towards Gravekeeper relatively fast and get him out of shovel mode. But that's not only it as well, because if we just name current day meta hunters, let's just see how many of them actually counter Gravekeeper. So the first one is Gamekeeper. Gamekeeper, 1 shovel will get Gravekeeper out of shovel form immediately. Next is Soulweaver. Soulweaver can just catch up by walking to Gravekeeper, hit Gravekeeper, and then use her triple web stacks to gain a normal hit AP and then blink him down. Another one we could say could be Opera Singer, as we said before as well. Just way too fast and there's no way GK can actually rotate around. And of course Nightwatch being another one of these characters that can use his slow Tempest and then use the wind stacks to catch up to GK as soon as possible to get him out and then get an extra hit on him. Not only that, I feel like for current day meta as well, a Fool's Gold can keep him confined in one certain area, because it's what we've seen before too, right? The moment that a Goldman is near the Gravekeeper shovel, what he can do is he can put a cage down first and then hit Gravekeeper to get Gravekeeper outside of shovel form, but Gravekeeper is still inside the cage because the cage is not dismantled. So I do feel like for Gravekeeper, he's a character that is good when it comes to rescuing, because he does have claustrophobia. When he gets out of the burrow mode, his shovel, he gains a 50% rescue speed, which is really fast. Right, but even so, what I would say is more or less right now for Gravekeeper, a lot of hunters can't just chase after him because it is currently high chase hunter meta, and like even with the likes of Geisha as well, you can just catch up normally and then get a hit and then maybe butterfly dash towards the Gravekeeper as well. So he's a really good rescuer, but also at the same time, when it comes to him being the first chase and you're only the one that has a tie turner, the chances of you containing for real long is still pretty low compared to maybe Forward, Wildling, First Officer, and Mercenary, which is why he is a part of tie guarantee as well. Now, if we just talk about if he isn't first chase, his decoding debuff is 15%, which honestly speaking isn't too bad compared to 25%, 20%, and 30% from Mercenary, First Officer, Wildling, or Forward. But it's just more or less that Gravekeeper's containment isn't as good as anyone that's above him. Next is Prisoner. Prisoner will be a really good decoder in solo ranker tier. For Prisoner, what does he have? Prisoner has this connection in which he can circuit control the cipher machine, where he can connect the cipher and decode 2 cipher machines at once. Initially, Prisoner has 105% decoding progress, but when he connects towards the cipher machine, he will gain an extra 5% decoding progress, which makes it a total of 110%. Overall, what is really good about Prisoner is the fact that he's able to decode his own cipher machine and another survivor cipher machine in the same location as he is, meaning that he does not have to actually run towards this certain cipher machine to decode it. Of course, there are some non-benefits, let's say, I just can't find a word in my mind right now. There are some cons, and that is the fact that you lose between 5 to 15% of decoding progress depending on how far away the cipher machine is. Now, usually this might seem like a bad thing, but if you think about it, if a cipher machine is at 90% and there is a hunter nearby, instead of actually going to the cipher machine, you can just connect the cipher and then push the cipher from where you originally are. So like with Prisoner, what is really good about him is that you lose less time when it comes to decoding a rescuer cipher machine. It takes you less time to decode a cipher machine that is at 90%. Instead of running to the cipher machine that's miles away from you, you can just instantly set up a connection and pop the cipher machine yourself, meanwhile still maintaining your own decoding progress at the cipher machine you are currently at. Overall, for Prisoner, he doesn't really have that much debuffs. He does also have an item to use in which it is called a Conductor. Conductor has a cooldown of 45 seconds and an energy charge duration of 75 seconds, and the regeneration duration within your AoE of the connected cipher machine, in which on the ground it shows like small electricity particles. It's 77.7 seconds. He can shock the hunter once, in which the hunter will be stunned for a second, if I am not wrong. Yes, it is a second, and then if the hunter is within a pallet, you can stun the hunter within the pallet and then drop a pallet down and then basically pallet stun him as well. Now, for Prisoner, he does have two cons. Con number one is if his electricity area, what is it called? Conductor area range is really big, then and then there's a pallet nearby. When the hunter is almost shocked during your AoE of the connected cipher machine where there's electricity, it can immediately cancel attack recovery animation. So that's con number one, and this does tie up to con number two as well, which is sometimes when you're a little bit too late or your pin is really bad and you shock the hunter but the hunter hit you first, you also reset the attack recovery animation of the hunter, which does become quite a bit of an issue, which is why most of the time you should shock the hunter at a really good range, because your electrocution is pretty big. Honestly speaking, I'm quite sure it's bigger than every hunter's radius, except for maybe Feaster, but like every hunter's radius except for Feaster or Woo. And his second his second bad external trait is his Obsession, in which his basically his fear radius is reduced by 50%. So like you kind of get the heartbeat a little bit slower compared to any other survivors, which means that the hunter is able to pull quite a bit of a distance towards you before you realize the hunter is near you. But overall, for Prisoner, his containment is good. Let's be honest with ourselves. Yes, even though there is only one conductor, one electrocution, Prisoner does not have any debuffs when it comes to vaulting, dropping pallets, nor movement. And Prisoner, yes, that one mini electrocution shock may not seem much, but it is regeneratable, which means after your first rescue, you should be able to shock the hunter at least another time. So like you should be able to get at least like 2 shocks at max in one game, and then 2 shocks minimum one game, and then 3 shocks at max if you were cheered twice. So for Prisoner, he's overall a really good character, and look, if you have Titan as well, you can just link up the cipher machine immediately right after you get rescued, just so your survivors can push the cipher machines instead of you. So like overall for Prisoner, it's still a really good character. Definitely would recommend him if you're playing solo rank in like very low tiers where they don't decode and you just want to rank up. But that's that for Prisoner. Next is Entomologist. Entomologist will be very high on versatile range. Reason number one is because of the fact that she's really easy to use. Reason number two is the fact that she does cover quite a lot of aspects, such as containing, supporting, and rescuing. For Entomologist, what does she have? She has bee swarms, in which a plethora of bees gather around Entomologist, and they can either tank a normal hit, not tank a normal hit, they can either tank a foggy blade hit, tank a spit, tank a fireball. It basically tanks any chip damage effects that are given to hunters aside from bombs, Mad Eye's fences, and sculptors' statues. So like if you just look through the hunter pool, you can say Soul Weaver spits, Rippers Foggy Blade, Axe Boy's fireballs, and then even Undead Stash. You can slow down Naiad's dash, you can slow down Geisha's dash, you can slow down Opera's dash, and sometimes you can even you know, just pull a lot of distance, because when you are on the bee swarm, you gain a 5% movement speed boost, in which these are typically good for, you know, slow moving hunters such as Wax Artist, Goatman, Ivy, Hermit, Kirk, just anyone slow in general. But not only that, entomologist speeds, if you place them on the ground, the hunter's movement speed will be reduced by 85% if the hunter wants to walk through them. And most of the times the hunter would want to hit the bees as well, so sometimes you may like to bait the hunters, excuse me, into hitting the bees, but then take the bees back immediately, just so you don't deplete 40% after each hit. Now, to be honest with you, what is really good about Entomologist, not only is her containment great, her support is also really good as well. A lot of the times when you are supporting a survivor, you would get the bees out and try harass the hunter a little bit. If the hunter hits too early and you move the bees back, that's just more time wasted for the hunter and you still have max bees. Or even sometimes if the hunter forces themselves to walk through the bees, it just allows your survivors to pull even more distance. When it comes to entomologist bees as well, as we talked about before, there's just so many scenarios in which you can help your teammates to contain you a lot longer. That's what makes it really scary about entomologists. If a teammate needs some movement speed boost, the teammate can just get on entomologist bees and the entomologist can contain for the survivor instead, if your survivor doesn't know how to contain against this certain hunter. And not only when it comes to support, she's also a really good rescue harasser, in which when the hunter hits a survivor and they're in attack recovery animation, you can use your bees to push the hunters back towards the corner and force them to hit the bees. Meanwhile, your survivors pulls a really long distance away. For entomologist, she also has a buff called I'm quite sure it's called honeycomb, right? No, it's not called honeycomb. It's called mixed reagent, in which I probably butchered that, but it basically leaves honey on anything that's vaultable, such as windows/pallets, and whenever a survivor decides to vault that, they'll gain an increased 10% vaulting speed, in which this is pretty good for mechanic, for doctor, for priestess, for the mind's eye, for whatever character has a vaulting debuff. Now, there is one bad external trait for entomologists, in which it is called fragrance. When the entomologist leaves the hunter's line of view, they will be revealed to the hunter. Their location will be revealed, highlighted in red to the hunter for 2 seconds, which means when you pull distance away from the hunter, they will be able to see where you're going for 2 seconds. So if you want to play mind games, or if you want to just stand still and check where the hunter is, or if they're mind gaming you, I don't really recommend it that much. So like, it's usually better just pull a straight line away from the hunter if they're still moving. But of course, if they are like fast, or if they want to get chips on you, sometimes, you know, cutting corners might not be a bad option as well, or just leaving your bees there and then slow down a hunter by forcing them to hit the bees. But overall, Entomologist is still a really good character, didn't get any buffs or debuffs, still very versatile. Next will be Painter. Painter will be moving up straight towards tie guarantee right after his buff. Now, for Painter, I did consider putting him in solo ranker, but we're gonna say tie guarantee for now. Yes, he's been using tourneys a lot, but I don't recommend people watching how tourney players play, because that's usually a 4-man team. Now, why is Painter team count dependent? Painter has 2 paintings, in which when he sees the hunter's face for 66%, you're able to start painting at a little bit of a slower rate. This usually is really good compared to before, where you need the hunter's full face and then you can start painting. It basically just gives the character more leeway when throwing down a palette and just looking down the hunter breaking the palette. It just allows you to get your items faster, which is, honestly speaking, really, really, really good. Now, not only that, if the painter has the painting at 66%, he can prematurely just drop down the painting. Of course, the hunter won't be stunned for as long, but they will still be at least stunned long enough for you to be able to rotate towards somewhere else, right? For Painter as well, when he gets chaired, the survivors does not have to worry about before half or after half rescue, in which I think this is really, really, really good, especially in low tier when they don't know how to rescue. Right, because like a lot of times in Spider to maybe in B to maybe Mammoth or Griffin, your survivor always rescues you after half, and you just don't know why, right? You just don't know why. And like, if they rescue you after half, as a painter, you don't have to worry about that. If they rescue you too early for the first time, as a painter, you don't have to worry about that. Right after you get your second in, just say sell me. And the hunter is basically forced to stay near the chair until you are returned to the mainer, which is what I really like about painter. Like, okay, unless your survivors are dumb, it's a whole different issue. But most of the time you should be fine. For painter as well, not only when you drop down your painting, you gain a 2% movement speed boost for each painting drop down with a maximum of 4%, which honestly speaking, when you have no items, it's pretty good. And if you can pick up items from chest right after dropping down your 2 paintings, it makes him pretty strong. Right, because like if you make it to endgame alongside with the borrowed time speed boost, you pretty much move really fast compared to any other survivor. Now, the only bad thing about Painter is the fact that it's a little bit similar to Ento. It's just that he gets revealed to the hunter for 5 seconds. It's called self-fulfillment, external trace. He gets revealed to the hunter for 5 seconds right after he drops down his painting. So even if Painter runs away from you really far away and it's still within 5 seconds, the hunter is going to be able to see where you are. This is just so that the hunter doesn't lose track of you. Now, to be honest with you, the reason why I'm not willing to put painting up anywhere above solo ranker is because of the fact that painter is quite first chase, is quite heavily dependent on being the first chase character. If painter is in first chase, it's okay for him to become second chase, but during his second chase, he might not be able to contain as long because the hunter has more presence than, you know, early on in towards the game, which means the hunter is basically stronger. Now, unless painter comes in to maybe try body block once or just try put a pallet down to look at the hunter's face, yes, you can support. But another good reason why painter isn't any higher is because of the fact that the hunter can just look down or look away from the painter, and the moment they drop the painting, they can just, you know, not look at it and prevent being stunned, or just go straight up towards the painting and then look at the painting immediately, so your stun duration is a little bit shorter. But overall for painter, he doesn't really have that many debuffs aside from being highlighted by the hunter for 5 seconds right after using painting, but that doesn't really affect his containment as much as you really think it would. So we're gonna move painter up from team comp dependent to tie guarantee as a character. I might main him a little bit more during season 34, but we'll just have to see how it goes. Next is Batter. I'm gonna put Batter in solo ranker. We're gonna move him down by 1 spot due to his recent nerfs as well. But what does Batter have? Batter has a bottom ball in which he has 3 balls and a bash, in which he can use it to push back the hunter if the ball if he basically manages to baseball bash ball something hit the hunter and then pushes them back. I don't know what happened with my English. It's not baseball, it's cricket, excuse me. Per each cricket hit, when the cricket ball travels through the air for 0.5 seconds, it will lose velocity, which means the more it travels, the less it will be knocked back. So most of the time, preferably speaking, you would want to be near the hunter to push the hunter back as much as possible. So in a nutshell, for a TLDR, the batter's bottom ball only pushes back the hunter a certain amount of range. Right, so like imagine, like this is an example, this is not the actual measurements, but if the ball can only push the hunter 5 meters away from you and the hunter is 4 meters away, when you bottom ball, you're only going to be able to push the hunter away by 1 meter. But if the hunter is within you, is near you within 1 meter radius, and then you bottom ball the hunter, they'll be pushed back by 4 meters. That's kind of what this skill is on about. Now, of course, the measurements isn't exactly the same. I'm not saying you can only be pushed back by a certain amount, but that's like the general gist of it. But right after the recent adjustments of Batter, I think the biggest one that affected him most was his Rampage form, in which you can't cancel it. So what is Rampage? Initially, Batter has a 20% vaulting and pallet pull down speed, and when Rampage is activated, Batter will have a 40% vaulting speed and pallet drop down speed. But of course, during Rampage form as well, when you use a bottom ball and hit the hunter and the hunter hits an obstacle, when it is pushed back, they will be stunned. Now, back then, during season 32, when Batter could cancel his Rampage, he can recycle the ball as much as possible and to basically reset his cooldown on bottom ball as much as possible. But now it does make him a little bit more situational, and it does punish him a bit more if you kind of brainlessly or even just make a mistake with your bash and ball. And because of this, most of the times Barmaids are kind of forced to use, forced to basically expend one of their bottom balls and not be able to retrieve it ever again, which it does make things a little bit easier for the hunter. Now, he is a part of solo ranker because he's still a great container, he's still a great harasser, and he is still a great supporter, in which his altruism helps out quite a lot. When a survivor is damaged, he will gain, when a survivor is attacked within 15.2 meters of him, as long as the batter is not in pursuit, he will gain a movement speed of 50% for 10 seconds, which basically means that if he's trying to support a survivor and then they get hit, he'll get a 50% movement speed boost to basically immediately catch up to it. Basically, this guy moves faster than a hunter for like 10 seconds, and then there's a 60-second cooldown for it. So like TLDR, if a batter is nearby, beware, you're gonna get harassed to death. But I do think because of his, you know, rampage adjustment as well, it does make it a little bit easier for the hunter, because like you can only harass, when you balloon harass, you're definitely going to like consume one full ball. And after that one full ball consumption, there's nothing else you can do about it. You cannot get it back at all, right? So what I do really think that, what makes him a little bit lower than last season is because of that too. Wow, I'm basically twisting my tongue a lot today, but that's honestly all about it. Now, he does have a decoding debuff of 20% on the Cypher machine, but you know, that's not too bad if he can harass for long. So Batter will be a part of solo ranking this season. Next is Toy Merchant. Toy Merchant will also be a part of solo ranker. I think we will put Toy Merchant maybe above forward. Now, to be honest with you, I haven't seen Toy Merchant that much, and it might be just me, but I don't understand why. I guess I could understand why because of Opera and Ivy, but I also still don't understand why. Now, to be honest with you, Toy Merchant, I feel like she should go down lower, but because there are two bans in rank, well, one ban in rank in low to mid tier, and in high tier there's two bans. Toy Merchant does get pretty hard countered by Opera and Ivy at the same time, because Ivy can use Revelation from Phantom to force the Toy Merchant off light, and then Opera is just fast as heck, so there is also that too, and I would say Lizard, even Reptilian as well. But back to the main points. I'm gonna say Toy Merchant is a part of solo ranking because her solo containment is still good. Right, and I would say that she is able to rescue, she is able to give items to survivors such as painters, such as just anyone who can pick up items in general. Now, Toy Merchant might not excel in current day meta because all survivors are kind of regenerable. All survivors' items are regeneratable, such as Seer, Priestess, Acrobat, Prospector, and like Wildling, Batter, Cowboy. There's just a lot of them are regeneratable that you see in rank. And for Toy Merchant, her solo containment is good. Her support isn't too bad if you can catapult immediately towards a 2-story area, but I don't think a lot of people use it anymore because of Geisha in rank as well. I mean, Geisha has just recently been nerfed, but this is season 33 meta, not season 34, so we're just gonna have to see how Toy Merchant fares next season. But what does Toy Merchant have? Toy Merchant has a catapult in which when she places it down, the survivor can see where the catapult is globally, since it is highlighted in yellow. Toy Merchant can use a glider in which it assists her when it comes to containing against the hunter. A little bit similar to Weeping Clown, but I'm quite sure the glider duration is a little bit lower, but the glider should move faster than the rocket. And the next one would be that she can throw a toy down if she's going into rescue, which means if a survivor that's on chair and the survivor on chair does not have an item, the Toy Merchant can use a glider and then throw a toy down near the chair during flight, just so they can pick it up immediately and then try rebound contain as long as they can. Now, Toy Merchant's chest opening speed is increased by 100%. Toy Merchant can have a total of 3 items in her basket, backpack, and she does not really have any debuffs too, to be honest with you, which is why I do think Toy Merchant does belong in solo ranker at least. Not having any debuffs, having good containability and supportability and good enough rescue against chip hunters, I don't think she's that much of a bad character, but also at the same time she is pretty map dependent too, because she needs to be played in big maps such as Moonlit, Ever Sleeping Town, Chinatown, I would even dare to say Hospital, Leo's, and Lakeside. Just any map aside from Red Church and Arms Factory. And of course, with the rumors of Darkwoods being a map coming out too, I think Toy Merchant would excel there as well. So like for now, still a part of solo ranker for me. Really good contain, really good, well, good enough contain, good enough decode, good enough support, good enough rescue. She's kind of like a jack of all trades but master of none, but I would say a little bit better than Lucky Guy because she's not RNG based. Next will be Patient. Patient will be very high on the versatile tier list because Patient is Patient at the end of the day. Patient has 3 hooks in which you can hook towards an obstacle within 15.2 meter radius, and when you hook on towards the obstacle, you basically pull yourself in and then you push yourself out. So it's kind of like, what is it, kind of like Batman? No, not Batman. I don't know what I'm talking about. I won't lie to you about that. I was just thinking about a game mechanic. But so yeah, that's basically what the grappling hook does. No, Spider-Man. Yes, Spider-Man. There we go. Jesus Christ. But overall for Patient, for our Spider-Man here, he is pretty versatile because A, he's good at any map, B, he's basically a in-flight mercenary, and C, he can contain pretty long against any type of hunter, and he can hook himself towards 2-story areas as well if he has the range. Overall for Patient, he doesn't have any debuffs aside from emotional attachment, in which he rescues Psychologist 50% faster if she's on the rocket chair, but if she is decoding with any other survivor, he gains a 30% decoding debuff, in which it might hurt you. It might hurt you if you want to rush the last cipher machine, because sometimes that 30% may be 1 or 2 seconds away from priming the cipher machine for you. Overall for Patient, there's really nothing much to say about Patient because he doesn't get any buffs or debuffs, and he's kind of just the same overall. He's just a very nice character to use if you want to play him in rank. He's not that hard to learn. There's some hook spots that are insanely OP, but even if you don't learn those hook spots, you are absolutely always almost about to be golden, because his cooldown duration is only 10 seconds, and of course once you use the hook, it immediately goes into cooldown and you already pull like a good 25-30 meter away from the hunter, and the hunter will take time to catch up to you. So like overall, in a nutshell, your cooldown is probably only about 6 to 7 seconds. But not only that, for for Patient as well, he does his secondary trait is a rescue type. So like he's kind of like a Toy Merchant, but of course you have to hook somehow in towards the chair. I wouldn't say he's better than Mercenary, because for Mercenary he can just use a wall and immediately dash. For Patient, he needs to stay stationary for 1 second before his hook completely goes out. So there's this animation issue as well. Patient also has an external trait called Bonded, in which it only works with Psychologist. If a Psycho is nearby within a certain radius, I think, he can use an extra skill to dash towards the Psycho, and of course he moves faster than Hunter during this time as well. This is Ada. Ada will go directly next to Patient here. Ada is a really good character, especially to using rank or in tourney setting. Ada is able to take 3 hits. And for the first hit Ada takes, she goes into stress mode, in which it lasts for 32 seconds. And if Ada maintains the stress mode even after she gets incapped, by the time she gets rescued for the second time and either Tightener is off or there's no Tightener, Psychologist can tank 2 hits. Now, to be honest with you, this is pretty strong because this kind of guarantees a 32-second containment from Psychologist no matter who you're up against. And of course, if you pull distance away from the Hunter early game, that's just even more containment for you. Now, Psycho is a part of Versatile because A, she doesn't really have any decoding debuff, nor vaulting debuff, nor containment debuff, nor rescue debuff. The only thing what a Psycho have is actually a healing debuff, but there is a catch to this. For a Psychologist item, it's called Empathize, in which it looks like a whistle. For Psychologist, she can empathize a survivor, so she can blow her whistle, and then if the survivor receives the whistle, all the survivor has to do is to accept it, listen to the whistle, and then the survivor will be healed by half health, which means if a survivor was initially at half health and they receive Empathize from Psychologist, Psycho will be able to heal them by half health within 9 seconds. If I am not wrong. No, within 7 seconds, excuse me, even faster. Now, Because of this, 7 seconds just to heal one survivor, and you can heal the survivor globally no matter where they are. Even if you're at half health, Psychologist can do this as well. So like Psycho basically exchanges her health bar for a survivor's health bar. So this is really good when it comes to a rescuer wanting to second rescue. This is really good when it comes to, you know, a survivor that has just been rescued from chair and the hunter lost him. So then like the Psycho can just immediately heal them to full health. And when the hunter finds them, the survivor can contain for even longer because they are now at full health. So 2 hits instead of 1 is just way better overall. For a Psychologist as well, she is very similar to Patient in which they both have the bonded attribute, meaning that if a patient is nearby, Psycho can dash towards the patient ASAP. Honestly though, for Psychologist, she's a really good character to use because, you know, not only is she able to globally heal, she's able to heal within 7 seconds. So that's basically way faster than a Barmaid. And she can heal the survivor countless amount of times, right? As long as she gets healed as well. But per each empathize used, she gains a 10% healing debuff, which means after you used 5 empathizes, you'll gain a 50% healing debuff, and of course it's capped out at 50% healing debuff. Now, to be honest with you, throughout a match, I don't think you'll use more than like 2/3 empathize, but it's a really rare case scenario you need to use 5, because I don't even think that the Cypher machine takes that long for you to even use 5, right? But yeah, overall for Psychologist, being able to tank 3 hits is honestly a really good part about her, and it's the fact that her stress allows her to basically contain for 32 seconds bare minimum before she goes down, which is another really good thing about her too. And like most of the times what Psycho mains do is they kind of they will use this to their advantage, in which like, oh, if they want to rotate somewhere and they're 1 hit down but stress is still there, the hunter basically isn't allowed to hit the Psycho, because if they do, then Psycho will still have stress, and the next time someone comes to rescue her without Titan her, she can tank 2 hits, which basically means a really good successful rebound kite. So overall for Psychologist, a really good supporter / healer and a really good container, having no decoding debuff and only a healing debuff. She basically works really well in any type of setting where you need to either A, Cypher Rush, or B, heal a rescuer, in which that's kind of what happens most of the times anyway. Now, of course, when a Psycho is during stress phase, she cannot be healed, which means that right after she heals a survivor, she can't be healed if she's at max health, if she can tank 3 hits. But overall, that situation really rarely happens, right? The only time where you are during stress phase and you're at half health is when you're being chased by a hunter, and you will not get healed by any survivor. So like, she basically just can't drink Dublin mid-kite if she still has stress, and she took 2 hits. That's about it, but I don't think you'll be playing Psycho and Barmaid in one team together, because that just doesn't seem right. It's better to have like 1 healer and 1 container, 1 decoder and 1 rescuer usually in a team. But overall, still a very good, very versatile character here for Psycho. Next is Novelist. We're going to put Novelist on solo ranker since he is still quite a good character to use. I'm going to put Novelist maybe behind Prisoner for this one. Now, I know not a lot of people use Novelist, but initially when he got buffed, a lot of people started to use him, but I think I think it's more just a character preference for most people. But what does Novelist have? Novelist, when the game starts, initially has a novel in which it is called a metaphor. Well, it's called a sketchbook, but let's just call it a novel or a storybook. When the Novelist is within 13.5 meter radius of a hunter, he can switch positions with the hunter, and of course, he gains a movement speed boost right afterwards as well. He is also able to gain more basically progress of the novel if he looks back at the hunter. But when the Novelist initially has 1 storybook, he cannot gain any progress. So you have to make sure that Novelist does not have a novel for you to be able to gain novels, which means it's not like Seer, you can only gain 1 stack and 1 stack only each time. But I'm quite sure for the first novel, it should take up to a maximum of, if I was around 8 to 10 seconds. And then, of course, per each additional novel, it's an increase of 2 seconds each, up to a maximum of 8 seconds. Overall, for Novelist, he's a really good character to use, especially in solo ranking. He can kind of mini assist a survivor if you want to allow the survivor to have a little bit more distance away from the hunter, or more or less just a body block scenario, a little bit more similar to a thief. Now, why do I put Novelist ahead of Thief? It's because I just feel like Novelist is a little bit more versatile compared to Thief. He's able to decode fast before the 50% mark, and he decodes slow after the 50% mark. I guess you could probably just say it's a trade-off of a 50-50. But for Novelist in general as well, the 50% movement speed boost for 2 seconds right after swapping positions does allow him to rotate pretty easily to any other area. And he does not really get full counter by any hunter. Now you may say, hey, moonwalking counters Novelist, in which I would say, yeah, you know what, I don't necessarily disagree with you, but it doesn't really matter to a Novelist main who has a book initially early game as well. And most of the times what survivors do like to do is they like to stand in between a pallet, and when a hunter is about to hit you, they'll swap between you and the pallet and then go and stun the hunter instead. There isn't that much buffs or debuffs for Novelist. We just talked about Foreshadow as well, about the 10% increased decoding speed and 10% decreased decoding speed, depending on whether it was before or after the 50% mark. But overall for Novelist, I don't necessarily think he is a bad character. He is a really good character to use as well when it comes to rescuing too, because he can't swap positions with the hunter. But of course the range will be decreased from 13.5 meters to 6.8 meters, but at least it kind of guarantees you to be able to rescue against any type of hunter. Aside from Modites, I guess, depending on how long the gate stays, but defense stays, but like against most other characters in the game, you should be relatively okay when it comes to rescuing. Now, of course, Novelist does get countered by Ivy, and I do think it's mainly Ivy, but you know, if you're only gonna get countered by one hunter and by moonwalking, it doesn't really matter that much, because Novelist, as we said before as well, only has initially has one book early game too. Now, I do know that some people may disagree with me, but I still do feel like Novelist is a really good character to use, regardless of what anyone says. Like the 10% increased decoding buff and the 10% decreased decoding buff, it just, like, it's very situational, right? You could probably say like, oh, I'll decode 50% of the last cipher machine and go harass. You could potentially do that too, but then I guess the con is if there's a cipher machine at like 80%, you have a 10% decoding debuff, that kind of does hurt you quite a bit if you want to prime the cipher machine. Overall, for a Novelist, his books are pretty nice if you can properly get a pallet stun immediately right after you switch places with the hunter. But of course, usually that would happen when you have a rescuer rescuing and then a survivor trying to run away, and you're just there, oh, I'm near a pallet, okay, rescuer, please pallet stun the hunter for me, XYZ. But yes, I would say Novelist is still a really good character using solo rank, and he's not bad, honestly, he's not bad. Next is going to be Little Girl. We are still going to put Little Girl in team comp dependent, and I won't lie to you, for Little Girl, she isn't a bad character to use. It's just that she's being adjusted quite a lot, and there isn't that much use cases for Little Girl. So what does Little Girl have? Little Girl initially has memory fragments early game, in which she can put pages down to push either the hunter back or forward. It just depends on where they are within that radius of the memory fragment. Now, sometimes if you put the pages down late, instead of pushing the hunter back, you push the hunter towards you, in which that's not what you really want to do. So Little Girl does have a lot of room for errors as well when it comes to utilizing her items. But even if she does use her items correctly, what I would say is in current day meta against fast chase type hunters, it doesn't really matter that much. The really only good thing about Little Girl is her memory sync, in which she can actually leech on towards a survivor to either A, help them contain and use those memory fragments on when she's on the survivors, or B, leech on towards the survivors and then immediately desync from a survivor to body block if they are at half health. If a survivor at full health is hit by the hunter. Meanwhile, the little girl is memory synced with them. The little girl will be automatically de-leech and receive a 30% movement speed boost for 2 seconds right afterwards as well. Usually what little girls would do is you would preferably, you know, go assist a survivor right after they've contained for long, which is another reason why they're part of the incomp dependence. But as a little girl, you cannot memory sync on towards a survivor if they have been rescued from chair. You need to wait 20 seconds before you can actually leech on towards them. This does not include Embalmer's coffin, by the way. You can just leech on towards the Embalmer immediately if they decide to use coffin. Now, for little girl, she does have one more thing, which is called Pity, in which she can hold a button, and she's able to reveal all survivors' locations. And if she decides to confirm on a survivor, she can teleport straight towards the survivor in order to either A, heal them, or B, leech onto them. Now, for memory sync, there are some buffs as well, in which if they are decoding cipher machine, the cipher machine decoding speed is increased by 70%. If they are containing, their vaulting speed is increased by 15%, and their pallet dropping / rocket chair rescue speed is increased by 30%. Overall, for little girl, she's very team comp dependent, because if you play her solo rank, you gotta pray that you're first chase and you can actually kite well. But if you are not first chase and your teammates does not kite well, it's gonna be really hard for you to even go in and support, because you don't have enough cipher machine and you don't want 2 survivors decoding instead of 3, right? But overall, little girl doesn't really have any debuffs. She does vault pretty fast, I won't lie. Well, I would say it's because of her small model, but like it seems like she vaults fast anyways. But like she doesn't have any decoding debuff. Her containment is a little bit below average, but like I guess it's more about her supportability that matters the most. Now, most of the time as a little girl, if you are first chase and you get damaged early game, you can leech on towards a rescuer. Aside from a Wildling, while he's on board, you can leech on towards anyone else, and maybe contain for a little bit longer. A lot of times you pair up a little girl with forward, just so if little girl actually gets chased, she can leech onto the forward, and then forward can't contain, since forward has high containability. But you don't see forward that much in ranks anymore, so that does also push the little girl down quite a bit. So there is that too. She's not a bad character, it's just that the meta does not suit her currently. If this was a chip hunter meta, of course little girl would definitely work, because she's not, because she counters slow movement type hunters. But since this isn't, it's a whole different scenario. So little girl will be a part of team comp dependent for this season. Next will be Weeping Clown. To be honest with you, Weeping Clown is currently S tier in Asia, and I have evaluated him quite a bit, and he has received a nerf for season 34. But since this is season 33 tier list, and I won't lie to you, he is honestly speaking a really good character. I was contemplating on putting him in meta, and I think he will stay up there. And I do think Weeping Clown will stay up there. For Weeping Clown, he got buffed quite a lot during season 33. You can get on towards his rockets faster. You can basically move faster when you're on rockets initially, and then it slowly starts to slow down. And I am quite sure there was another buff on him as well, but I just don't remember what it was. But overall, for Weeping Clown, he has 3 rockets initially early game, and for each cooldown of the rocket, it is around 16 seconds, and you have a total of 3 quantities. When your rockets crash into an obstacle, the survivors will gain a 30% movement speed boost. Meanwhile, the hunter will receive a 2.5 second movement debuff of a 50%. But of course, if they're during the center radius range, they will be stunned for 2.5 seconds. He does have a debuff in which his decoding speed was reduced by 10%, but overall it's not too bad. And why would Weeping Clown be a part of meta, and why you don't see him that much in tourneys? You don't see him much in tourneys is because of Opera, excuse me. But in rank, you're able to ban you're able to ban the Opera singer ASAP, so you can just bring out Weeping Clown anytime. Now, this might be a little bit weird for some people as well when they're viewing the tier list, and for some people they might say, but hey, it doesn't really mean anything for Weeping Clown. If you think about it this way, when Weeping Clown, like we'll talk about all aspects of Weeping Clown. If Weeping Clown gets on rockets faster, and he initially has a boost when he initially gains more speed compared to before when he gets on rocket, then that means he's able to get out of hunter radius ASAP. Right, so that's point number 1. It's very hard to actually cancel out his rockets, because he can basically get on rocket very fast, and it's faster than the attack animation, and he can just boost himself out of the range and just pull distance away from the hunter. That's honestly speaking point number one, because like even against Geisha or Bloody Queen, he is still faster on Rocket as well compared to even if they dash towards him, and all it takes is for Weeping Clown to do one boost against a mirror or one boost against a dash. He's already pulled so far away. And point number two being the fact that after his containment, his rescue ability is also really good. Why? It's because of his harass potential too. Because Weeping Clown's able to actually get on rockets faster, that means he's able to release the rockets faster too, which means that if the hunter is a non-distance pull hunter, that means when the hunter picks up the survivor and the Weeping Clown rockets come through, you will always almost guarantee a stun rescue or a no animation balloon rescue, which I do think is really good. Right, of course there are some mind games involved, but if you're able to buy time, you're able to buy time. And even if the hunter has mischievous, it doesn't really matter that much, because they're not going to be able to like when the Weeping Clown lets go of the rocket moves really fast. So like if you do have mischievous, you can't really drop down the survivor on time as well. So like because of the increased animation speed and actually getting rocket prepped and ready to go, that's honestly a very good thing too. And you know, if there is a wall between you and the hunter and the survivor that's on the ground, that makes things even better, because you can actually guarantee a rescue by that point. And the third thing is Weeping Clown's supportability. Because of the fact that Weeping Clown's able to get onto rockets faster, and because of the fact that he does gain a speed boost, a mini speed boost, it's faster initially when you get on the rocket, and it slows down towards normal speed as the rocket proceeds. You're able to assist survivors in rebound kiting pretty well, which means you can actually just right after rescuing the survivor, you can get the survivor on towards the rockets, and then you are able to get them away. Cause like if you are able to carry the survivor even during tight turn time, that does make it pretty strong. That does make a really good contender for rebound kite containment. But a lot of the times you do see Weeping Clowning rank as well bring tight turner. Like Weeping Clown is supposed to be a contain and assist main, not a rescue main, but if he's able to bring tight turner in a team and still use his 3 rockets to contain really well, I do think that it does make him a really good character in the long run too. But overall for Weeping Clown, 10% decoding ability buff doesn't seem much. For next season, it's going to be 15%. We'll just have to see how it proceeds. But for current season, and from what I'm seeing in Southeast Asia and in Southeast Asia, the S badges, and in CN, the S badges, they perform really well no matter what hunter it is, no matter the Geisha or the Bloody Queen, honestly. Maybe Reptilian, there are some issues, but overall, still a really good character. That's a part of meta that definitely cannot be slept on. I feel like EU slept on Weeping Clown a lot. Aside from Dooku, I guess, because he still plays him. Next is going to be Professor. I will be putting Professor really low. Really low. I don't see him at all. I won't lie to you, I don't see Professor at all in any rank situation. I just think he's at a really bad state currently. Professor has hardening skills in which when he's within a certain radius of the hunter, their attack animation gets slowed down. And of course, he can activate his Shell Shock, and if the hunter hits the Shell Shock, they will get pushed back and stunned for 4 seconds, which is very good. But even so, this Shell Shock can't be baited out, or you can just use a stun type character to, you know, immediately get rid of Professor, such as Anne and Wax Artist, right? And I do think as well for Professor, like if you just think about it, right, you may say, hey, Anne is a really counterable hunter and it's easy to tie against her. Yes, but to be honest with you, if we compare Doctor to Professor going up against Anne, Doctor has more of a chance to contain against Professor. Because like more or less what's going to happen to Professor is one cat and immediate jump towards the Professor and then stun the Professor, and the Professor can't use any items and you get immediate hit. Compared to Doctor, once you get hit you can at least still pull the distance away and heal up at least a chip damage and then tank 2 more hits afterwards, right? And like for Professor, he was really high in the tier list maybe a few seasons ago because he does have mini skills left on the map, 3 mini skills left on the map for each survivor to use, but now there is only 1. And of course, if the Professor wants to provide a skill for his survivors to use, he needs to be able to scale his skin, drop it on the ground for survivors to pick it up, and then he receives a 10% decoding debuff for 30 seconds right after that, and it might just not be worth it to do it. And you can only do it once per match. So you're only able to give 2 maximum scales to your survivors in a team of 4 with 3 other survivors, which means one of them are not going to be able to receive it, and it's still very baitable. Now, if the hunter hits it, they will be immobilized for 1.43 seconds if I am not wrong, but they cannot pick up another skill for another 120 seconds. Before, Professor was like a mini Seer because there was 3 mini skills in the map for everyone to pick up and use, but now there's only 1, and it's kind of unpredictable where it will spawn, unless it is predictable and I am wrong. But overall, Professor is at quite a bad of a state right now. I mean, yes, he's really good against a certain different type of hunters. When it comes to maybe single hit and then slow down their attack animation range, so it's a little bit easier for you to use scales. But I generally don't think he's a good character to use at all. Because like, if you go through the hunter pool and ask, okay, what character counters Professor? You have Hellenberg, you have Smiley Face, you have Ripper, you have Anne, Soulweaver, you have Guard 26, Sculptor, Axeboy, Feaster, Violinist, Evil Reptilian, Bloody Queen, and even Undead, Breaking Wheel, Naiad, Wax Artist, Hermit could be considered one as well, and then Shadow. So like, he does have a lot of counters too. Now there is something I forgot to mention, is the fact that Professor does have an external trait in which he can actually tank a chip damage. It is, I'm quite sure it is called a scaled skin as well, but oh well, what can we do? What can we do? I just feel like it's way too hard in a nutshell to be able to do anything at all for Professor right now. It's because like there's not really much to do for him. There really isn't much to do for him. I'm just trying to check here whether his scaled skin only drops down 1 or many, but I'm quite sure it only drops down 1. Right, you can't really do multiple at the same time unless there is a cooldown. Okay, no, there's a 120-second cooldown for each. No, is there? Okay, there is probably one. Yeah, there's probably one, but it doesn't really say in the description, which is why I was kind of worried. But yeah, Professor is at quite a bad of a place right now. Next will be Antiquarian. Antiquarian should be a part of meta no matter what. She didn't really receive any buffs or debuffs, well, nerfs or buffs, so we can't really move her anywhere up or down the ladder of the tier list. I would say more or less for Antiquarian, if we just talk about it, she has her bamboo sticks in which she can use, I'm quite sure, a maximum of 6 times if she wants to disarm a hunter, and if you use 3 of them in a row, you should get a maximum of 18 seconds of disarm. For Antiquarian as well, she doesn't really have any debuffs. When the hunter misses a basic hit near Antiquarian, her pallet drop down speed would be increased by, I'm quite sure, pallet drop down speed should be increased by, I'm quite sure, 10%. No, 5%, with a maximum of 2 times. But of course, with the increase of pallet drop down, the stun duration will also be increased by 5% with a maximum of 2 times. It's more or less just for Antiquarian right now. I think she's really strong because she can disarm hunters. Her bamboos can get rid of items from the hunters, like fire, like anything you name that isn't big, she should be able to get rid of it. So like anything aside from Mad Eye's fences and Dreamwitch's leeches, well, you can't disarm Dreamwitch's leeches, but you just can't get rid of them, I guess, just make them evaporate. I think those are the things that Antiquarian cannot really deal against. And you know, Anne's disciples cats are one of them too, but also at the same time, Antiquarian does have this thing called a swing, in which she can rotate her bamboo stick around herself. So she circulates it. So she circulates it around herself to gain a 5% movement speed boost. This typically works really well against chip hunters if she wants to make more distance as well. So it's kind of like Entomologist in that sense too. For Antiquarian, not only her containment is good, her harassability is also really good as well. Just as we talked about the disarm, you could potentially speaking just use one bamboo stick each. So you have a sweep, stab, and swipe. You can potentially sweep first, stun them for 1 second, and then wait for the hunter to maybe move for 1 second, and then swipe back to push them back once again. Because of the pushback effect on the bamboo sticks, most of the times Antiquarian can have a maximum of around 6 seconds stun on the hunter to allow the survivor that was being chased to run away. And of course, the hunter also does get a movement debuff as well, alongside with the disarm. I'm quite sure the movement debuff is like for 1 second, but the disarm is for 4 or 5 seconds, just depending on if you do it in a row or not. So like, not only is her solo containment good, her harass ability is also really good as well. She counters almost all hunters because of her different item sets. She has a flip in which she can flip over low obstacle, a little bit similar to Acrobat. She has a spin in which it allows her to rotate her bamboo around herself and gain a 5% movement speed boost, a little bit similar to Entomologist with the beatworms. And then of course with disarms as well, being able to whack the hunter and disarm them, not allowing them to use a basic hit. Not only that, Antiquarian also has this external trait called Nimble and Graceful, in which her footprints disappear 1 second faster. It's basically like it's basically very similar to Explorer's external trait as well, where his footprints also disappear 1 second faster. So there is also that too. Now for Antiquarian, she does have one debuff in which her gate opening speed is decreased by 30%, a little bit similar to Acrobat but TLD, or usually if a hunter decides to come over and a hunter with detention teleports over to your exit gate and you have 3 bamboo sticks, you could just disarm them for 18 seconds, and during that 18 seconds time you can definitely just increase like the disarm time to 18 seconds to get the gate open. Overall, Antiquarian's gate opening speed, I'm quite sure, is 23 seconds if I am not wrong. Yes, it should be 23 seconds. So honestly speaking, gate opening speed isn't too bad as long as there isn't any survivors nearby. Now, of course, when playing Antiquarian, what you do need to be careful about is when a survivor is nearby, your disarm will be reduced by quite a lot. I'm quite sure it will be reduced to 1 second. So if you're trying to harass for a survivor nearby, just know that when you disarm the survivor, as if they are within 15-meter radius, they are still, they only get disarmed for 1 second. So you need to make sure to maybe like disarm once and then disarm twice and the third time in a row, just so they get that maximum 10 second disarm. But as we said before as well, you could just stun the hunter for 6 seconds and keep him there while the survivor rotates away, which also is fine too. Overall for Antiquarian, aside from the gate opening debuff, she does not have any vaulting debuff, nor decoding debuff, nor healing debuff, and she could be a really good rescuer as well. When you stun the hunter, when you disarm the hunter once during that stun animation, you can just go immediately for the rescue or push the hunters back with stab, so you are not within their attack radius. Overall, Antiquarian is still very meta. Just don't see her much in tourneys because of Ivy. But in rank where you can ban 2 or just ban 1 depending on who you want. Honestly though, Antiquarian counters Opera Singer, so if you don't ban Opera Singer and just ban Ivy instead, that also works really well for Anti. But yep, still a very good character to use. Next is Composer. I will put Composer down here on Play for Fun this season as well. Composer did receive a buff last season, this season, in which during his switch, I think his item, when he decodes a cipher machine where there are calibrations, that is like a rhythm game. Once it reaches 100, you can just keep it on auto to maintain that decoding buff. To be honest with you, when he has 80 stacks, he decodes at 67.5%, which is honestly speaking really fast. He's the second fastest decoder in the game, but because of the fact that his tuning capability, which is his item, it gives him movement speed boost for, I'm quite sure, 5 seconds, but I just feel like it doesn't really allow him to excel well against current day meta, where it is like a lot of geisha operas and maybe going against Ivy it might be a little bit easier, but it still doesn't really matter. You could, like back in the day, what I said was if you just rotate between palette and window speed boost and tuning, you can get infinite distance pulling. in which, honestly speaking, back in the day, it wasn't wrong because it was all about chip hunter meta, but this season meta is all about operas, all about IVs, all about goatmans, all about, you know, geisha, soul weaver, etc, etc. So I don't necessarily think Composer is that much of a good character to use when it comes to rank as well. He's more or less play for fun, or even if you just want to play rhythm game on the Cypher machine too. But he is the second fast decoder in the game. Now, he does have one good external trait called pianonism, not pianonism, but I'm quite sure it's one of the external traits where if the hunter is going to go towards him, the hunter is highlighted for a certain period of time. I don't know if they removed that or not because I'm quite sure they haven't. It's just because of the fact that, you know, when Composer is doing his calibrations with the rhythm game, you don't really have a good field of view. So it has so the hunter has to be highlighted in red for the Composer to see and just to run away. I'm quite sure NetEase did definitely add that. But for now, Composer, yes, his decoding is good, but with his containability side, I genuinely don't think he is worth it to play. He's more of a play for fun decoder compared to anyone else here. Next is going to be Journalist. Journalist for me is a tie guarantee type of survivor, tie guarantee type of rescue, if you wouldn't mind me saying so myself. So what does Journalist have? Journalist has a camera in which she can put down 3 little Orphees, newspapers boys, onto the pallet to pallet count for you, or one and one rescue Orphee to rescue the survivor from chair. Now, of course, if you use up all your pallet little Orphees, you can basically switch your rescue little Orphee into a pallet little Orphee, in which it basically means that if you are first chase, you at least have 4 items. I do personally think that Journalist is a better container than Gravekeeper, simply because of the fact that when a little Orphee has been spawned, Journalist gains a, if I am not wrong, 8% movement speed boost when the little Orphee is nearby as well. Therefore, like with the, no, it's a 10%, sorry, it's a 10% movement speed boost when the little Orphee is nearby as well. So like it just allows her to rotate towards a pallet or a window a little bit easier, and it's the fact that she can use a little Orphee to body block. Most of the time, good Journalist uses their little Orphees as if they're playing Perfumer. They need to put a little Orphee down right in front of the hunter during the attack animation, and when the little Orphee has been hit, it will give a Journalist a movement speed boost of 30% for 1 second. Now, when little Orphee drops down a pallet, the pallet breaking speed will be increased, but the stun duration will be decreased. So most of the times what the hunters will do is they will just try to bait the pallet to come down first and then break the pallet instead, or maybe just not even break the pallet at all. But why would Journalist be a part of tie guarantee? I do feel like a good reason why Journalist is part of tie guarantee is because of the fact that her decoding speed is actually not too bad. It's only a 10% reduction, and per each little Orphee used, it's increased by 3% for a maximum of 9%. Now with this little Orphee used, they have to be knocked down for it to stack up. So, you know, if you're chasing after Journalist as a hunter, you need to hit the little Orphee and then change targets if you want her to have more decoding debuff. But like that's honestly about it for her debuffs. She also stays on chair for 10% longer too. So I mean, if you really do decide to chase after the Journalist, not only is it hard for you to catch her as a single hit hunter, it's also really annoying when it comes to her staying on the chair as well. For Journalist, I feel like a good TLDR for Journalist is the fact that she can rescue late game with detention as well. Very similar to Merc, but even if Journalist was at half health, she can still rescue the survivor on chair if she still does have that tie turner with the rescue Orphee. Another thing about Journalist is, I think what I realized about, you know, survivors rescuing, like when survivors use Journalists to rescue, what I do realize is a lot of times against single hit hunters, they would just use the normal little Orphee to rescue, the rescue little Orphee to rescue, and then go inside alongside with the main body to rescue the survivor, in which most of the times the hunter hits the little Orphee and then hits the Journalist. I feel like most of the times you could, potentially speaking, maybe just use your main body to rescue against a normal hunter and then use the rescue Orphee alongside with yourself to go in for the rescue, because then at least you you can guarantee a, you know, second rescue if you want to Cypher Rush. And it's just that I feel like a lot of times during this maze, yes, I do understand you want to use it ASAP and try to get a no damage rescue. Maybe if there's a mech on your team, you can definitely try that, but aside from that, I don't see the reason why you should be using a rescue or if you're going in for the rescue for the first time anyways, because you're still just going to get half health damage. Well, against ship hunters, it's understandable, right? Against ship hunters, it's understandable because you don't want to get doubled down, so we can definitely understand that, which is why sometimes I would say journalists could be better than first officer and mercenary in a sense like this. But she does have a lot of room for error as well, because she can get countered by quite a lot of characters, such as, you know, stun characters, hermit, such as Anne, such as chip hunters as well, such as sculptor, and the likelihoods of those types of characters. But Jordan is still a part of tie guarantee of a rescue for me. I do think that she's a better container than Gravekeeper, but I wouldn't say that she's a better rescuer than Gravekeeper, but we're gonna put her above Gravekeeper because she's a better container. Next will be Aeroplanist. We're going to put Aeroplanist down in versatile for this season. I decided to move Aeroplanist down from meta for a few reasons. Reason number one being the fact that he's a bit hard to play and no one's willing to play him anymore. Reason number two being the fact that after his nerf of his jetpacks being reduced in range, what I have realized is a lot of, you know, normal ranking survivors, when they use their jetpack, there's always like a 1 second delay before they use their other one, compared to pro players where it's like almost instantaneous with their jetpacks. So for example, a normal player will jetpack 1, wait 0.5 seconds, jetpack 2, wait 0.5 seconds, and then jetpack 3. A pro player would do is jetpack 1, jetpack 2, jetpack 3 immediately without any stop, so they can actually pull the distance away. Because the biggest issue when it comes to rank Aeroplanist mates now, I feel, is the fact that whenever they use their jetpack, it takes them too long to readjust their positions. I just feel like they're not proficient enough, and if you want to pull distance away the hunter, and if you want to play Aeroplanist well, you can't have that small lag in between. And especially with the fact that the distance has been reduced as well, hunters of normal walking range, like, they will be able to catch up towards you quite easily if you don't do it instantaneous to make it hard for the hunter to actually catch up. For Aeroplanist, he will still be a part of versatile even after the distance reduction. Why? Because he has machine tuning, which when he decodes a cipher machine, the cipher machine's decoding progress regardless of who comes over to decode is increased by 2%, and if he is body blocking for a survivor, his pallet dropping speed will be increased by his pallet dropping speed is back to normal. Well, his pallet dropping speed is reduced by 20% if there are no survivors nearby, but if there are survivors nearby, the pallet's dropping speed will be back to normal, and the hunter will be stunned for 20% longer, so he's not a bad body blocker as well. For Aeroplanist, not only does he have a jetpack, he also has a hover in which he can fly up in towards air and use his jetpacks to pull even further distance away, which means most of the times what Aeroplanes may do is if they want to pull a really far distance, if the next containment area is very far away, they'll just hover into the air and then use your jetpack to pull an even further distance away, because when you're in air, you travel further than when you were on the ground. Overall for Aeroplanist, honestly speaking, not a bad character. It's just I feel like currently in rank we don't see him as much because there's way too much delay, because like even in IVT, HMT and Korea, I just feel like they have a lot of lag when it comes to their jetpack. It's not like instantaneous compared to maybe Southeast Asia. Now, I forgot about what happened in IVT and in AU. I won't lie, I was commentating at 5 AM during that time, but did we even play Aeroplanist? I'm not quite sure on that anyways, but yeah, still a part of, he will be moving down to versatile for Aeroplanist. Next will be Cheerleader. Cheerleader is a part of meta as well. For this season, I think Cheerleader will still remain on top regardless of what happens. Cheerleader is really good against any type of hunter. She has 2 pom-poms in which she can motivate herself to gain a 70% movement speed boost for 4 seconds, but after the 4 seconds you will get a 40% movement debuff for 4 seconds. Usually most of the time what survivors would like to do is they would use 2 pom-poms, 2 motivates at the same time to gain a 70% movement speed boost for 8 seconds and then a 40% debuff for 4 seconds when they're pulling distance away from the hunter. But of course, especially for Cheerleader mains too, if you have only one pom-pom to use and you want to use it to rotate towards the nearest pallet or window, usually you would time it pretty well to the point that when you're actually near that pallet, you have your movement debuff and then you can drop the pallet down or even vault over the window, just so you can expire that 4-second debuff as soon as possible, or when the hunter's vaulting over windows or pallets. Yes, this might seem like a bad thing for Cheerleader, but most of the times it doesn't become an issue unless you're up against, like, you know, an opera singer. Against any type of like normal pace movement type hunters, such as Geisha, such as BQ, it doesn't really matter to Cheerleader that much, because most of the times she uses her items right after the hunter has used their items too. Now, not only does Cheerleader have Motivate pom-pom for herself to use, she can also Inspire, in which she can reduce her cooldown by 30 seconds, which her initial cooldown is already 30 seconds, or she can reduce the cooldown of other survivors by 20 seconds with a maximum of 2 times. The cooldown of this is 50 seconds, of course. Now, to be honest with you, when you use Inspire and the survivor has not consumed their items yet, Inspire will stay on the survivor for 10 seconds, and then you know, like, of course the survivors will know if they have Inspire or not, because they will see a small light above their head. It's not a halo, it's more like fairy dust going on towards the survivor's head. But aside from that, survivors, right after they use their items, their cooldown will be reduced by 10 seconds. This is especially good when their cooldown will be reduced by 20 seconds. This is really good for the likes of Antiquarian, Seer, Mercenary, Weeping Clown, Aeroplanist, Patient, Entomologist, Psychologist, First Officer, Acrobat, Prospector, Perfumer, Wildling, Batter, Cowboy. I'm just trying to go through my mind. Oh yes, Painter is another one, alongside with Journalist, GK, Gravekeeper, and then, you know, so on and so forth. So like Cheerleader can assist almost all types of survivors in the game that have longer cooldown, because, like, you know, the survivors with shorter cooldown, it doesn't really matter, you know, if they get refreshed or not. So like Cheerleader is a really good support on that side note too. Another part of what Cheerleader has is Encourage. When the Cheerleader is near a survivor, she can encourage the survivor by start cheerleading next to them or within a certain radius. I'm quite sure the radius is around not quite sure what the radius is around, but okay, if it's within 20 meters, I just checked it up, it's within 20 meters. If you encourage within 20 meters, the survivor will slowly but surely gain stacks. When you encourage a survivor to gain a 5% movement speed boost, which is pretty nice. And of course, whenever you consume 5 stacks, you'll gain a 50% movement speed boost for 1.5 seconds and a 50% debuff for 0.75 seconds. The total cooldown for this is 7 seconds. This is especially good if you want to pull distance away from the hunter and immediately vault out a window or something. Like 50% means that you move faster than the hunter, just to keep that in mind as well for everyone, just so you think that it might be bad. Not only that, when you get 38/43 stacks per each use, the survivor can consume all stacks and to immediately get a half health heal, which means, but you need to keep in mind that when you get this 28 stacks, you need to be hit by the hunter first before you can consume this heal, which means if you are at full health and you've been encouraged, the hunter hits you, you're back to full health after consuming 28 stacks. If you're at half health and the hunter hits you and you're incapped on the ground, you will consume 28 stacks and you'll be back on the ground running once again. So like Cheerleader, she does have decent enough containability, in which her pom-poms regenerate every 60 seconds and you can have a maximum of 2, but like initially early game, she does have 2 pom-poms for the containment as well. What makes Cheerleader the best character of it all is her support ability. Her support is, I would say her support is very different from both Priestess and Antiquarian. Cheerleader is more of a global support when it comes to, you know, resetting cooldowns for survivors items, and of course for giving like movement speed boosts and basically a free hit recovery against a hunter when you have more than enough cipher machines. Overall, Cheerleader does have a debuff in which it is called All Thumbs. Her decoding speed is reduced by 10%, but usually 10% doesn't really mean much if you compare it to, like, you know, 15%, 20%, 25%, and 35%. Yes, she might decode just a little bit slower compared to the other survivors. Her cipher machine decoding progress is 90 seconds compared to the normal 81 seconds, but because of the fact that she can assist survivors to contain for even longer, it's not a bad trade-off to be honest with you. But Cheerleader will still remain on top for season 33. Now, next on the tier list will be Puppeteer. Puppeteer will be staying on high on Versatile. We can even put Puppeteer above Aeroplanist. What does Puppeteer have? Puppeteer has this Little Lewis, in which when he activates Little Lewis, he will consume 25% of fear, but he will block one full hit. Meaning the fact that in a nutshell, you're able to activate this in a total of 3 times to block 3 hits, and then you take another hit, and it means that, you know, Puppeteer can actually tank 4 hits before he goes down. For Puppeteer, he doesn't have any decoding debuff, he doesn't have any gate opening debuff, neither does he have any vaulting debuff. The only debuff he has is a healing debuff, in which it is 20% for season 33. Yes, it's been decreased to 10%, but that's for next season, we're not going to consider that in. Of course, for Puppeteer as well, not only is he able to tank hits, when he uses his Little Lewis, as his fear radius increases, he'll gain an 8% movement speed boost for 8 seconds. This is particularly really good, especially against chip hunters if you want to dodge chips as Puppeteer, and it's really good if you just want to pull distance right after, like, if you want to pull distance if the hunter baits you out of your Little Lewis, which it does happen sometimes as well. For Puppeteer as well, he does have an innate trait alongside with Little Lewis, and that is his own mini flywheel. It's basically called Inanimated Puppet, in which he basically stands still for 1 second, and the hunter hits him during that 1 second, the damage will not be applied. So this is really good against the likes of Bonbon if the chip damages come through, against the likes of Sculptor if the homing missile slashes are going to come through, or even Axe Boy, or even Feaster. And it's just, you know, a lot of characters in general. Yes, 1 second might not seem like a lot, but if you can perfect Flywheel, I'm quite sure you can perfect this skill as well. But as we have talked about before as well, healing debuff for the Puppeteer is 20% this season. So yeah, there is also that too. So, like, in a nutshell, right, TLDR, it's kind of like saying, hey, Puppeteer doesn't really have that much debuff this season except for healing debuff, and usually when the Puppeteer is first chased, he does not necessarily need to get healed by other survivors. Now, I did forget to mention this as well, because Puppeteer is a puppet, quote-unquote puppet, because Little Lewis is a puppet, not Puppeteer, other survivors can't heal him, and when he heals other survivors, they only heal at chip damage. Now, this is really bad when it comes to chip hunters, but current day meta is all about single hit hunters. So like Puppeteer, even if you do only heal chip damage, it should be more than enough at the end of the day. There's really not much to say about Puppeteer because he didn't receive any buffs or nerfs for season 33, but for season 34, of course, during end season 33, he did receive something, but we're not going to talk about that until the next tier list, when the Knight also comes out too. Now, next is Fire Investigator. Fire Investigator goes up really high in this tier list for Versatile. Fire Investigator after this buff is actually really good, but let's just talk about what Fire Investigator actually has. Fire Investigator has 2 airbags, and which each airbag uses. When he drops down in an airbag, he can immediately either go into the airbag and then push himself out to a 9.6 meter range, and then gain a bit of a movement speed boost right afterwards. Or he can put the airbag in between him and the hunter to either A, push the hunter back, in which if he pushes the hunter back, he'll gain a 50% movement speed boost for 2 seconds, or B, put the airbag down and then block the way of the hunter, so it forces the hunter to actually charge attack, kick the airbag to allow Fire Investigator to actually pull more distance away from the hunter. Now, we are going to be able to put Fire Investigator really high up on top, it's because of his buffs. If we mainly talk about Fire Investigator's buff, let's just think about it, right? The first buff is that his airbag range has been increased. The second buff is the fact that the airbag going from deflated to inflated is now very fast. And then the third buff is the fact that when the Fire Investigator wants to activate his airbag, instead of it being 0.3 seconds to activate it, now it's 0.2 seconds, which is basically faster than any hunter's attack animation. Not only that, all other survivors survivors can also use the airbag too. So overall for Fire Investigator right now, it's easier to put down the airbag and throw down the airbag even further away for maybe a little bit more of a support, or it's easier to basically pull distance away from the hunter and to just drop it down ASAP and then block the way instead of the hunter hitting you, right? And not only that, Fire Investigator also has buffs as well, in which his interaction speed is increased by 10%, which means his vaulting and pallet dropping speed is increased by 10% because his interaction speed. Now, Fire Investigator does have a 5% decoding debuff, in which when he is containing or near the hunter, he'll slowly gain decoding buff up to a maximum of 10%. And honestly speaking, 5% decoding debuff really isn't that much, right? 5% decoding debuff simply just means that if it takes one survivor to decode a cipher machine of 81 seconds, it only takes Fire Investigator a total of 85.2 seconds. And what I do think as well, because of this small debuff for a little bit more of a support and for rescue against all other type of hunters, Fire Investigator honestly isn't a bad character to use. If we talk about rescue in general, what Fire Investigator could potentially do is, if the hunter decides to camp, they can throw an airbag down right in front of the chair, and either the hunter has a charge attack hit down the airbag, or the hunter has to hit the Fire Investigator ASAP. But then, like in this case, now the survivor, right after they've been rescued, they can immediately propel off the airbag to pull distance away from the hunter, which basically does assist them in their rebound kai. Which is why I say Fire Investigator is a really good character if you want to, you know, sometimes guarantee a rescue. I'm not saying he's better than any other type of rescuer, but he does have that capability to, you know, force the hunter to make a decision of the two, to either hit the airbag or to hit the Fire Investigator first before the survivor that gets rescued will you know, get the airbag speed boost and then propel away. Now, not only that, Fire Investigator can do mid-kai harasses and mid-kai supports, such as blocking the way in certain areas, maybe we can say hospital entrances, red church entrances, or even under certain pallets. Overall, it's really good, it's especially with the fact that if you're not against dash type characters like, you know, Opera and Geisha, these type of things really do matter a lot in the long run, because you can put a lot of distance away from the hunter. Not only dash, when Fire Investigator is nearby as well, he gains decoding buff. So like right after maybe like, you know, 10 seconds of trying to give something, he'll maybe get like 3% decoding buff, maybe less, maybe 2% decoding buff. But then like it's more or less just trying to reduce his decoding debuff as much as possible too. For Fire Investigator, you don't necessarily have to be near the survivor to harass them. You can just throw an airbag down right in between the hunter and the survivor, and sometimes because of this range as well, you're able to force the hunter to charge attack hit and then, you know, allow the survivors to contain even longer. So like for Fire Investigator, he's a really good container. He does have some support capability, and he does assist the survivor in one way or another when it comes to rebound kai containment, or just to block off the route of the hunter between themselves and the survivor they are actually chasing after. I would say back in the day, last season he was team count dependent, because it's really hard to activate his airbags and to propel. Right now it's a little bit easier because it's only 0.2 seconds, and like, you know, it doesn't really take that long to propel away. For the airbags, for Fire Investigator himself, or for Florian, it only takes him 10-second cooldown before he can reuse it, but for all other survivors it's 15 seconds as well. So like TLD, or if you've seen IVL and of course in playoffs, these Fire Investigator mains can cancel Patroller. These Fire Investigator mains can just immediately go into the airbag in 0.2 seconds out of the way and propel out forward, because you propel fast to dodge that normal attack hit. But overall, for now, Fire Investigator is still definitely a very part of versatile tier list. Now, for Faro Lady, honestly, for Faro Lady this season, she's not that much of a bad character, and she is not that much of a good character. But to be honest with you, I know Faro Lady isn't used as much in rank, but I think she is solo ranker, honestly, as a decoder for this season, but maybe a little bit further down below. For Faro Lady, it takes around 70, if I'm not wrong, it takes around 72.9 seconds to decode a cipher machine, because she can immediately inject decoding 10% decoding progress if the cipher machine is less than 10%, which means like just by touching the cipher machine, it's already 10% decoded. So like, of course, the cipher machine decoding progress will be a little bit faster, which is why 72.9%. For current season, before Faro Lady's buff, what I would say is, yes, you're able to see the cane, you're able to see, oh, if the Faro Lady is actually using her bait or not, using her, you know, like snowball effect, not snowball effect, her frosty trails. It does not make her as good as all other type of characters because she is all about mind game. But to be honest with you, if you can play these mind games well, you can almost always top up against any other hunter. To be honest with you, for my personal opinion, Faro Lady is really good when it comes to first chase, but when it comes to second or third chase, when, you know, the hunter has presence, it might just not be as easy as for Faro Lady to counter certain type of hunters. For example, Gamekeeper with unlimited hooks. There is also Sculptor with AoE damage, Mammon with AoE damage, and so on and so forth. To be honest with you, Faro Lady does have some counters. Like some hard counters you might consider Smiley Face, you might consider Anne, Disciple Anne, you might consider even Bonbon sometimes if they pull really far distance away from you, because then there will be a purple soul rotating around the survivor. Sometimes you might consider Opera Singer as one of them, you might consider Night Watch as another one of them, you might consider Breaking Wheel, you might consider Wax Artist, or even you might consider Undead because of the amount of distance that he can pull. But overall, for Faro Lady, I do think it's because of the fact that you can play mind games against hunters is what makes her really fun to play and what makes her a really good solo ranking type of character. And it's the fact that she is really good under the circumstance. If this hunter decides to camp the last cipher machine, you can just decode another cipher machine and, you know, steal some cipher machine away from the one that was initially at 90% or something. This external trait is called Dextertis. For each 1% of the decoding progress lost every second, she will increase her own decoding speed by 25, 20, and 15% respectively, depending on how far the cipher machine is. To be honest with you, with these things happening endgame, with accelerated decoding as well, you will always be able to finish a cipher machine like before the survivor is, honestly speaking, full shared rescue. So like overall for Faro Lady, she's a really good character. She can inject 10% on towards a cipher machine and then steal cipher machine as well to decode ASAP to finish off the last pound cipher machine. But I do realize a lot of the time that Faro Ladies in rank, what they do tend to do is they steal other rescue or cipher machine where the cipher machine is, you know, around 70%, and then they just start stealing it for some reason. To be honest with you, I like, okay, low tiers do it, but if high tiers do it, it's a really bad form of thing to do. Or even mid tiers. I don't even think mid tiers should be doing this. It's especially with the fact that, you know, you shouldn't really be stealing a cipher machine that's at 80% while yours is at like 80% as well, because that cipher machine is the rescuer cipher machines, and typically speaking, rescuer decodes at the most dangerous places possible. That is kind of their role as well because of their high survivability. And now you stealing the rescuer cipher machine just doesn't make a good look for you, and your cipher machine decoding progress is going to slow down by quite a lot. It's especially with the fact that your decoding speed is already like, you know, the 3rd/4th fastest in the game, with it only taking like 72.9 seconds to finish off a cipher machine. There really is no need for you to steal other cipher machines. Just finish your one as soon as possible, because it'll just be really bad for you for, you know, mid to end game. But overall for Faro Lady this season, yes, definitely a part of tie guarantee, well, not tie guarantee, solo ranking 100% for sure. And since it's coming to the end of the season 33 tier list as well, as I do realize once we were halfway through, my talking speed just decided to fasten up for a little bit. I will know that, of course, there might be some, you know, questionable decisions that I made by positioning certain survivors on the tier list, such as maybe Weeping Clown. Some people might just have different opinions. But overall, what I would say is, look, any opinions, please feel free to put it down in the comments, because I do read them in order to change my opinion. And I do think Sugu's opinion on Lucky Guy has still never changed, but I just do feel like, you know, watching tourneys has reinforced my opinion on Lucky Guy quite a bit as well. Now, of course, this season 33 tier list, it has not considered any of the buffs or nerfs of, you know, the end season patch, such as for Mechanic, Exploit, Nightmare, etc, etc. So that is going to be a part of season 34 when Night comes out as well. But of course, Sugar Buns, that is going to be the end of season 33 tier list. This took me quite a while to record because we kind of went through all of the external traits of survivors. We're not going to do that for the next season one, of course, just because I think, you know, you got to do it once in a while just to refresh everyone's memory. But alas, thank you everyone for watching. Have a good day, good night, and I will see you all season 34.